Okay, folks, I want to welcome everyone to trying to remember what day it is. It feels that way. The Monday, December 16th, 2024 meeting of the Jersey Village City Council. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum of council present?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That brings us to invocation and pledge of allegiance by Dave C. Moore, missions pastor for Foundry Church.
May we join together tonight in renewing our pledge to unity and purpose as we recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for your love and the gift of life that each of us enjoys. Lord, thank you for our leaders that serve this city well. And God, we thank you that your word encourages us when it says in Psalm 121:1 that our help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So Lord, you know the measure of help that's needed in this place tonight as leaders lead and as citizens and residents share their concerns and plot the path forward. May our help come from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Lord, thank you that nothing is too difficult for you. And so, Lord, we pray your blessing and your protection over this city and for all who serve. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Okay, we have no presentations tonight, so that brings us to citizens' comments. Citizens who have signed a card and wish to speak to the City Council will be heard at this time. In compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, unless the subject matter of the comment is on the agenda, the city staff and city council members are prevented from discussing the subject and may respond only with statements of factual information or existing policy. Citizens are limited to 5 minutes for their comments to the City Council. The first comment card I have is from Mark Zeller.
Good evening. My name is Mark Zahler. My wife and I have been residents here for over 30 years. I'd like to make 3 observations to City Council. One is I'd like to applaud the fact that City Council stepped back away from the stadium and the apartments south of 290 and also complied with the overwhelming wishes of the residents to keep City Hall on this side. And a lot of people in a lot of administrations, once they sunk in, they would never reevaluate, and I applaud this City Council and the mayor for doing so. Second observation is we've had 2 pool bonds that have failed, and I suspect that my thinking on this is not that different than a number of other residents. When the subject first came up, my feeling was you ought to try to repair it. When it came up a second time, I said, well, maybe we should have a new pool. And I was totally open and willing to support it, but was disappointed when I saw to go to a Cadillac 2-pool, over $10 million project as opposed to a Chevy of about half that cost. And so if the City Council is to move forward again, I would urge them to think along those lines as a possible way to get the bond passed. And lastly, I applaud the reappointment of the mayor. I think you've done an excellent job, and I'm confident you'll continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Just one last thing. If you have time, I don't know if it's on the agenda, I would be interested in the status of where are we with regard to the project moving it City Hall north of 290.
Sure. All right. The next comment card I have is from Denise Jungles. I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced.
Okay, hi. First thing I want to talk about is 8401 Rio Grande. I bet that rings a bell with everybody. I have to, especially now that I can't cut through the golf course, I have to pass that house several times a day, and I get depressed every time I look at it. And I'm sure their next-door neighbors are even more depressed. I've come to you, I've gone to Austin, I've talked to a lot of people, and all I keep getting is, well, they just signed another extension. That house has been without glass in the windows since before COVID. and they keep getting more extensions. What I want to know, and I don't want any kind of political whatever, I want to know how long are we going to put up with that? We're setting a really bad precedent on the rest of the village that you can take years to remodel your house and have it look like a dump site, and that's okay. And it's not okay. Also, now that we're having the houses raised, we have houses with garage doors on the second story. There's got to be something we can do about that. That just makes the neighborhood look ridiculous. And lastly, last summer when our water bills were ridiculously high, we were encouraged to buy another meter, have another meter installed, which I did. Several of my neighbors did that. But unbeknownst to us, we were going to have an extra $15 a month charge for the privilege of having this extra meter, which didn't save us any money at all. On top of the cost of putting in the meter, we were charged even more for having it, which didn't solve the problem. So I know that's coming up. You all are going to vote on that. There's some options that you're thinking of. But I want you to think about the people that said, okay, we're going to do what you asked us to do, and then got screwed in the end. So at least that's how we feel. Okay? And that's about it. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Austin, did you say that that home is on the agenda tonight, or no, it's not? Okay. Do you happen to have an update, just a quick update on the status of that house?
They do have an active building permit. If the council wanted to take next steps, it would be to move towards a substandard structure.
And how long? What are the chances of that happening? I mean, I've been on this for years.
I think we would be going beyond kind of just simple. The problem is, because it's not on the agenda, we can't go too far into discussion on that. All I could do is ask him for a statement of fact of what the current status is.
The current status is they've got another extension.
Correct. So I wanted to make sure I got that information for you. We can't, as a council, discuss what our next steps are, because that's a Texas Open Meetings Act issue. So I apologize. I don't think anyone up here wants to go to jail for that. So
put it on the agenda for January.
We can, yes, we can put it on the agenda, but I'm just saying we can't. I can't answer your question as to what the next steps are.
Do you understand how that just gives a precedent to everybody else? Well, this house took 6 years to remodel, so I can.
I understand. I understand. We're starting to get into policy discussion, and I want to avoid that, because again, I don't want to break the law up here. So what we will do is we will look at putting it on the agenda so that we can discuss it. So I would encourage you, keep an eye out on the agenda. When you see it up here, please do come back out, and I'd be more than happy to discuss that in a lot more detail.
I think it's really long overdue.
I understand. Okay. I understand.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to address was at our last meeting we passed an ordinance to deal with the elevated garage doors. I understand at least one of those properties is in the process of replacing that facade. So it's being addressed, and the ordinance has been passed to make sure that it's addressed in the future. So,
okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
And if we could have an ordinance to address how long, at least, I don't care how long it takes them to do the inside of their house, but at least make the outside look presentable.
I understand. We'll put that on a future agenda so that we can discuss that in more detail.
Okay. Including glass in the windows.
Thank you. Okay, next comment card I have is from Eric A. now.
Good evening, City Council, City staff, audience. Eric Anal, 15601 Singapore Lane, resident of Jersey Village since 2020. I'm up here to give thanks on a variety of things. First off, I want to give thanks to Lori Cootie and Isabel Cato for their incredible service here in Jersey Village over the last many years. I'm not going to pretend I know how many, just a lot. So again, thank you for your incredible service. You've both been recognized highly and are very distinguished. I wish you the best in your retirement and your years forward. Thank you again. City Council members, I know all of y'all. I want to say thank you very much for the hard work that it takes and dedication and the many hours that you spend every day. Again, every day, many hours at this job that you do not get paid for and often get a lot of flack for. So again, thank you very much. Jersey Village City staff, thank you for your outstanding work. Of course, Austin, incredible leadership, and your departments are incredibly well run. Thank you very much. It makes this city an amazing place to live. Fire department, thank you. Y'all came out to our house earlier this year. I had a bump on the head. We kind of freaked out. Thank you for that. That was another amazing reason to feel great about living here. Police department, thank you for the incredible, diligent work you do day in, day out, daytime, nighttime, 24/7. We owe our security and our protection here to you. Again, thank you. A couple other things. Events. Oktoberfest was amazing. The new golf clubhouse and restaurant, incredible and delicious. The street construction on Congo, a pain in the ass, but a clear idea of what is coming for Singapore and Solomon, my corner. The 4th of July location for fireworks was, in my mind, outstanding. It gave us an amazing view of the fireworks rather than the flat view that we've had at the other park. I know it may be logistically more difficult, but it gave a perception of a much more beautiful view of the fireworks and the display of the concert in the lakes. Thank you for the derecho and the daytime hurricane. That was certainly a new word added to my vocabulary and a new experience of the daytime. Thankfully, we had incredible city services that took care of us, and we all managed to pull through. At least I did. We did, excuse me. It was also another reason to give thanks for the flood planning, the golf course berm, and the flood pumps, and to the city and their drone, and documenting the incredible effect that had on the flooding on the day after the hurricane. Great work on that. Thank you for Restaurant Week here in Jersey Village. We even saw some influencers roll into town. That was quite impressive for our little town. And while it was certainly a pain in the butt for some, the bridge was certainly an experience to be remembered or forgotten. City Hall and its future expansion on the other side possibly, or the expansion of city services to the other side of the street here, that will be exciting to see. So again, thank you all so much for your incredible work and for the, again, great year. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. The next comment card I have is from Rick Faircloth.
Good evening. Rick Faircloth, 16010 Lakeview, resident here for 45 years and spent some time on council back in the 80s and 90s. A couple of areas I want to talk about. One, I was happy to see that the new club house and restaurant had opened. But I have two elderly neighbors that wanted to attend the recent senior get-together they had last week. And the comment they had is that there used to be some handicap parking signs out in the front. They're not there. They're in the back. And also they said, hey, why don't you, are they going to do anything with the parking lot? Are they going to resurface it? Are they going to restripe it? Things of that kind of variety. These two folks, because of their ability, couldn't find a place to park, and they couldn't walk. And so they actually didn't attend so I want to just talk to Austin about that and make sure that whatever happens, you know, we do have a lot of seniors that go there, and I think we need to have some handicap parkings. We had them in the past. There were like 3 or 4 of them right on that front row, and I think we should consider doing that again. The other issue is I know you have a consent agenda item, which I believe is G2, to discuss the appointment of our new city secretary. I hope that someone on the council will remove that and discuss that with the regular parts of the agenda. And then the last item is in the regular agenda. As you know, I chaired the charter review with a group of 7 citizens here for a month and a half, and we made that report at the last meeting of a couple of recommendations to be put on the ballot. And I do think that we do need to give the opportunity to the citizens to see those and vote on those items up or down, and I hope that there's enough council participation to have that particular item go forward on the agenda. And that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Austin, do we know anything about the handicap spaces at the golf course clubhouse?
There are handicap spaces at the restaurant, and I don't believe it's been striped yet for the convention center, but I believe that's in the plans.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the last comment card I have is from Kimberly A. now.
My name is Kimberly Anal, and I live at 15601 Singapore Lane. As my 39th installment, life in Jersey Village was very busy during 2024. From weather events to music events, residents experienced frustrations of heavy wind and rain, but filled their bellies with delicious food and drink. The city staff of Jersey Village, as well as local business owners, make a point to entertain, educate, warn, and put forth a caring and immediate immersive experience. With mailed, printed news, electronic entry boards, and social media announcements, plus conversing with your neighbors, there will be many ways to find out what's going on, and check the calendar of events and other occurrences on the city website, jerseyvillagetx.com. January began with bingo nights at the Civic Center and membership groups like the Community Emergency Response Team, Women's Group, and Senior Outreach to plan out their activities for the year. In February, local restaurant Cedar Avenue made Mardi Gras fun, and Little Kitchen's Valentine's Dinner romantic. While March enjoyed green beer with Irish food flair, we swooned to country music hits in our large park. An unexpected hailstorm knocked a few roof tiles around and hid Easter eggs for children's delight. Good Eats on Jones Road sponsored a community fun day in early April with hot and fresh eats. Founders Day followed on the second Saturday, celebrating our Jersey Village founding in 1956 with fun festivities. Jersey Meadow Golf Club had the exciting unveiling of the new facility, spotlighting Little Meadow Kitchen and Cocktails. May moved in with a lesson on Jersey cows for the Cub Scouts. A derecho blew down 290 as we appreciated the storm warning siren. The Congo Street Reconstruction Informational Meeting hosted by Public Works and the Parks and Rec Youth Triathlon rolled past our house while we cheered the kiddos on. In June, Carol Fox Park celebrated a custom-painted new theme with participation from the community. July started out with a fireworks bang for our city's parade and musical enjoyment on Independence Day. And on the 5th, the blood donation bus was available outside of Senate Avenue Brewing Company. Unfortunately, we were wind-whipped by Hurricane Beryl the following Monday, and again drenched by a pop-up pour-down on Friday, which was also the city's budget meeting and open to public observation. The more you learn, the more you know. August was thankfully quiet, and the school zone parking permits were available to apply for and pick up. September's Jersey Village High School sports ball events kicked off the new school year. Watch the Falcons Band and Color Guard spend hours practicing their instruments, coordination moves, and teamwork. Walk Like Mad gathered to make a stand, raise awareness, and contribute to a future of no more victims. October began with National Night Out to meet neighbors and emergency services personnel. The first Brewfest beaconed so many residents and friends to enjoy Oktoberfest craft beer, water, sausage, sauerkraut, and live music, playing cornhole, dancing, and enjoying the night air while Parks and Rec entertained the kiddos. The Jersey Village Fire and Police Department's open house drew curious children and adults while going for a joyride in patrol vehicles and fire trucks. Then watch life-saving measures to a crushed car and burning car. The Jersey Village High School Homecoming Parade is the Wednesday before the game, with excited students celebrating their extracurricular activities, decorated floats, and tossing lots of candy to their fanfare. Speaking of candy, the Fall Frolic and Trunk or Treat attracted young goblins to enjoy music, a haunted house, and goodies. November raced in with the Lazy Day 1.5K and the Falcons' halftime final public performance on our football field. December rocked in, holiday in the village with piles of snow, Santa and Mrs. Claus, live music, tacos, and parade. While we await a street-by-street visit from Santa chauffeured by fire truck on Christmas Eve, we should be grateful to live in such a wonderful small town, as it is so easy to run into neighbors while shopping and eating locally. May the tribulations of 2024 be a lesson on how to handle the future with insight. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Kimberly. Merry Christmas. Okay, those are all the comment cards we have. That brings us to the city manager's report. Austin Blease.
Mayor and councilors, the report is in front of you. Happy to answer any questions you might have. One note on the purchase of the property from the church that will close on Wednesday, the 18th, so 2 days from now.
Good to know. Any questions from city council?
I was just going to ask, is there, besides the purchase, I guess, if we don't have the property, there's not much we can do about it other than the inspection that we had and design that staff is going through?
Right, yeah, so we've had the inspections, no major issues found there, and then we are starting the space planning process.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Is there anything that we can discuss about the status of the property south of 290?
So we do have the one parcel under contract with Levitt Industrial, and then we'll talk about the other topics of that in executive session later tonight.
Okay. Unless there's any other questions, we'll move on in the agenda. Okay. That brings us to the consent agenda. Is there any member of council who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda for consideration at the top of the regular agenda?
Let's move G2. I'm sorry, F2.
Okay. F2 will be considered at the top of the regular agenda.
And I see F2, and I'd also like to discuss F4.
Okay. So that's F2 and F4. Any other items that council wishes to remove from the consent agenda? If there are none, then I would entertain a motion on the modified consent agenda.
I move that we approve the modified consent agenda.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The consent agenda passes. That brings us to, we're going to start off with what was item F2, consider resolution 2024-93, appointing a city secretary.
That one to you.
I know, that's why I'm pulling it up. I just realized that. For those who may not know, although I suspect it's probably spread like wildfire through the city already, our longtime City Secretary Lori Cootie notified us that she was retiring effective, and I know I'm going to get this date wrong, was it February 7th? Thank you. Okay. For some reason, February 5th came up in my head. But so obviously that kick-started a process of looking for our next city secretary, and I am happy to report that that we have reached an agreement with Courtney Rutherford, who formerly served as Assistant City Secretary under Lori. for her to become our next city secretary. So we have on the agenda a resolution formally appointing Courtney Rutherford as our next city secretary. So unless there's any discussion, I would entertain a motion on this, unless you've got something you want to add.
I didn't know if Courtney wanted, if she doesn't, that's fine, but if she wanted to come up and say a few words, introduce yourself.
Thank you for allowing me to come up. I am, for those who don't know, born and raised in Jersey Village. My parents are Frank and Sandra Marr, who have lived here over 50 years, I believe now. I did work here at Jersey Village for 17 years, started as the cashier, moved into administration as the assistant city secretary under Lori, left for a brief bit to become a city secretary to get more experience, and I am very happy to be coming home to Jersey Village next month. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're awesome. So I'm really excited to see you come on in.
I'm very excited to get back here. Thank you.
Well, if no one else has any other, I would welcome someone making a motion to make this thing formal.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2024-93.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. Welcome on board, Courtney. I will just say we had a lot of really great candidates that applied and interviewed, and it was a pretty thorough process, and so we feel very good about it. It sort of seemed like the natural fit, and she knows what she's getting into, so welcome aboard. We're going to move on to item F4. Consider ordinance number 2024-37, correcting drawing errors inadvertently made to the City of Jersey Village official zoning map from June 14th, 2018 through July 15th, 2024 that were not in compliance with City Council ordinances. Austin Blees, City Manager.
Mayor, councilors, these are some changes that were made over the years, and at some point in time the zoning map got wrong, so we had to go back and look through all of the zoning maps and the ordinances, and it seems like these are the ones that the issues were had. So this ordinance tonight is just to correct those drawing errors on the map.
I just want to add to that, since the posting of the agenda, the map has been further updated. Only one little sliver was missing underneath the blue section where that was updated. You'll see it's white now. It needed to be blue, and so that has been fixed and will be added as an exhibit to the ordinance.
I brought this up mainly because I just wanted to know, do we know if anything between I guess there's a lot before 2018, but do we know of anyone that was affected or maybe was?
So we went back, pretty much back to, since it mostly involved the motor vehicle sales overlay district, we went back to when that was initially approved, which is in, I believe, 2010. And we looked at the motor vehicle overlay district through all the maps that we had, and we realized that the changes started happening in 2018, and so that's when we compared all the different ordinances that we knew had passed since that time to identify what areas needed to be updated. And somehow along the line since 2018, I don't know what happened, but things were left off and added, and so now we think we have it right. So
my last question on that is, I guess, do we have a process kind of designated now that whenever we do a zoning change, part of the map gets changed with that?
Right. So it's the biggest thing that we found when looking at this is it seems like at some point somebody went back 2 versions and made changes rather than taking the current version So that's where it appears that problem started.
Yeah, and so the other thing that I've discussed with the mapping department is that we do have all of the maps currently stored on DocuShare as part of the record keeping. They're out there, and they're also dated. And so I suggested to them that they use the same naming mechanism for their records, and that whenever they make an update, they get that most recent one. And then there was also discussion, well, sometimes during the process we make amendments, and I said, well, you still need to keep the same naming mechanism, but put version 1, version 2, version 3, so that you know what is the most recent. And they've made adjustments in their record keeping to make sure that they do that.
Can I also add something too? Maybe instead of versions, put also the date that it was updated in the title of the map itself, so someone could trace back, match up the minutes to or whatever, when it was actually updated?
Yeah, so the versions that they're talking about typically happen as we lead up to a council meeting. Amendments are only approved by council, and so it's always that council date that actual amendment happens that we're using, and so those little versions are just their own record keeping, and that's where they were also kind of getting hung up. So I said, you need to make sure that you identify those versions so you know which one is the most recent.
And just for clarity, what we're doing here, this is not an amendment to the map like changing zoning. We're making this in line with ordinances that have gone through the zoning process and have been approved by you. But because this, in essence, what's happening is staff is making changes to the map, even though they're in accordance with previous ordinances, we wanted to make sure that the public and you all are aware that this is not like circumventing the zoning process. We're making it making the city map come in line with what's already been approved.
The map that we're seeing now, is that the current map? Is this the map that we can all see now online?
When the process is completed and council approves this, the approved map will be put on the city website.
Okay. Is there also, and maybe this is redundant, but is there also a process in place to make sure that whatever is posted online remains current with whatever as these changes? Because it sounds like there's been some.
Whenever council makes an update, that I'm responsible for making sure that map gets put out there, and that map has been being put out there. But the problem is that the map needed to be the correct information, and so the city secretary moving forward will be the person that makes sure that the map that's on the website is the most current and the one that council has approved.
Thank you.
And I understand that you've recommended we don't have any further zoning changes until after February 7th.
That is correct. This will be the last one.
With that, I'm usurping Bobby here.
No, you're right on. Go ahead and make that motion.
I was going to move that we approve item, I can't even see.
2437.
Oh, 24, ordinance 2024-37.
I'll second.
Oh.
We have a motion from Councilmember Wasson, second from Councilmember McCray, or from Councilmember Shepherd. Okay. You know, that all-important second. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The ordinance passes. That brings us back to our regular agenda. We're going to go to item G1, consider ordinance number 2024-38, amending section 14-38B, officers' conduct of meetings, to provide that the city secretary is the secretary of the Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals instead of the building official of the city, providing for repeal, providing a penalty as provided by section 1-8 of the code, and providing an effective date. Austin Blease, city manager.
So, Mayor and councilors, the Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals plays an important role in hearing the appeals related to and recommending adoption of new building regulations. Although it meets infrequently, it's met 6 times since 2015, twice since 2020. Currently, our ordinance designate the building official as a secretary to the board. However, now that the building official is contracted out and we have relatively new staff in the community development department, there's less familiarity with the processes for the meeting preparation. This has led to some inconsistencies in support provided to the board and by extension to the City Council. Because this board meets so infrequently and the City Secretary handles the majority of other boards and commissions, it makes sense for this one to be handled by the City Secretary as well. So this change here tonight would just put that rather than the building official, it would be the City Secretary serves in that role. Happy to answer any other questions that the council might have.
Any questions for the city manager on this ordinance?
So this just brings BOA and BBOAA under the city secretary, right?
Correct.
I thought the Building Board of Adjustment, no, the other one. I get them confused. The Board of Adjustment is already, the Board of Appeals is already under the city secretary, correct?
So currently, the Board of Adjustment, I am the board secretary. The Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals, the building official is by the code right now is the building official.
Correct, but the other one is under you currently. Okay, because that one is run perfectly now. No, this needs to happen. So, yeah. Oh, wait. Mr. City Attorney, did you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. We looked this. There was a question about what's the building official's role in the BBOAA, and so, me and Lori were looking at this to make sure there was some idea. I think that we had heard that the building official had to be a board member, but just by rules, the building official is a ex officio member of the board. And if you read some of the duties for the building official, it implies that they would not be the secretary or any officer of the board. They operate at the direction of the board, so they wouldn't be an officer. So this is in line with your building codes and most common practices.
So that means that the building official will still attend these and still work to prepare when they work with the fire department the fire marshal's office to make sure that everything is where we need it to be.
Correct.
But not in charge of running or setting up the meetings. Thank you.
Okay. Unless there are any other questions, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2024-38.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The ordinance passes. So that brings us to item G2, consider resolution number 2024-95, setting the schedule for regular city council meetings for the period beginning June 2025 and ending May 2026 in order to make the council's meetings more accessible to the public and to accommodate conflicts with city holidays, the city election cycle, and local school schedules. Austin Blees, City Manager.
Mayor and councilors, for the last few years now, we've set the council meeting schedule based upon the school calendars. Tonight, this is up here for y'all to discuss as well. Staff did talk about this. We are making two options for council to consider, at least. Option one could be moving the regular meetings from Monday to Tuesday, the third Tuesday of every month. This would avoid the Monday holidays. It would also give council an extra day to review the council packet and meet with staff to review it before the meeting. One potential issue with this would be on the third Tuesday, would be if council were to call an election for November. That would need to be done by August 18th in 2025 anyway. So the third Tuesday would be the day after. So if there was going to be an election called in November or May of every year, we might need to look at that. But otherwise, the third Tuesday would work fairly well. Option two would be to keep the third Monday for each month as the regular, but adjust the dates for holidays and election canvassing. In this case, there would be a couple of changes. January and February of 26 would go to the second Mondays, and then Wednesday, May 13th, would be to canvass the local election. So just options for council to consider, and council can take whatever action you wish.
Okay, discussion amongst council on this.
So it looks like in option two, there's only 3 dates that are the third or beyond not on the third Monday, and one of those is the one that for canvassing, which is May. So we're only talking about 2 days, at least in 2026. My opinion, it's not worth an upheaval of a long-standing, I don't want to necessarily call it tradition, but thing that citizens are used to on Monday nights. But I'm open to being persuaded otherwise if someone feels passionately the other way.
I would say from a community standpoint, parenting standpoint, my concern on Tuesdays is if you have children involved in any high school sports whatsoever, varsity sports are played on Tuesdays and Fridays across the state of Texas. So that is something to just as a consideration, because that not only affects people coming here, like the community, but it affects like the people coming into the city, up to the school and things like that. Tuesdays, just something to be aware of.
And I'm fine with either one. Like, so I understand. Yeah, I don't feel strongly about it either.
Justin, did you have an opinion on this?
Councilwoman, if you're trying to make me earn my attorney because this is my last meeting this year, then I'm going to defy you in front of all the people here. So,
please do. Justin is leaving us for greener pastures. So I just feel like we should try to involve him as much as possible in this meeting. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to pass them on.
That's all right. Councilman McCray is just helping you bolster your billable hours as you get leave. So
keep us here. That's fine. It's my last meeting, so you just keep it going. Yeah.
I do want to echo what Councilmember Wasson mentioned, which is I think that we want to make sure that when we set these schedules that they are as consistent as possible. If there was going to be a lot of different dates all over the place that would justify shifting to a Tuesday, I might could see that being a good idea, but it looks like there's not a bunch of upheaval from keeping it on the third Monday. So I tend to agree. You want to keep some consistency there so people kind of know, at least have a pretty good idea when meetings are going to happen. Definitely encourage people to continue to keep tabs on the city calendar just to be sure, but that does provide some predictability. So anyone else have any other thoughts on this item?
No, I mean, I think Jennifer's comment around accommodating parents and with kids and sporting events, I think that's something we should do. So Mondays are fine with me.
So it looks like we have a resolution. I assume the resolution provides the option. So it's,
so option 2 would be the one with council's.
So it sounds like the consensus is to maintain option 2. So I would entertain a motion approving this resolution, selecting option 2.
I can make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-95 with option 2.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. That brings us to item G3. Consider ordinance number 2024-39, amending the general fund, TERS 3, and GEO Bond Series 2024 budgets for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2023 and ending September 30th, 2024 in the amount not to exceed $1,376,188 to amend various line items. Isabel Cato, Finance Director.
Yes. Like every year during the audit, we look at review the governmental funds line items, and some of those line items are over budget to unforeseen expenditures that we had during the year. So we require to make the adjustments before we issue the ACFR every year. So mainly some of those are the big ones are the issuing of the bonds, and also the debris removal for both the storms that we had during the May and April, and then in the summer.
Okay. Questions and discussion from City Council?
Just so I'm aware, these are these are things that were either already approved or we've already discussed. So this is not net new spend. I mean, they're already there. What this does is effectively ties it up to meet financial recording requirements.
Correct. Because of the governmental funds, we cannot be over budget, and some of those expenses were necessary, like the debris removal, the overtime when we had the hurricane and the storm. Also, the payment for the first payment of the Geo Bond Series 2024. So those were necessary expenditures that we had to have, and we need to adjust the budget before we present the ACFR.
And insofar as some of these storm damages, I see like a couple of them are like FEMA supplies, FEMA equipment, those sort of things. That would be possibly reimbursable, and that would affect, due to timing, the 2025 budget.
Right. Yeah, we've received some of that revenue already this fiscal year, but that came in last week or 2 weeks ago, and we're going to receive a little bit more as well. So we'll see unanticipated revenues from FEMA reimbursements in this fiscal year, but the expenses all happened last fiscal year.
And that's, of course, with interest, right?
So, yeah, I know every year around this time we do have an ordinance where we have to clean up everything, so this is not unusual. I think it looks like the bulk of this definitely is. And I assume the fire department overtime line, was that largely due to the hurricane and other emergency responses? Because I noticed that there were really 2 or 3 big line items, I mean, aside from the bond item, but it looks like it was largely emergency response in terms of the dealing with storm cleanup.
We definitely had a lot for fire department overtime, and that was the hurricanes there. Also, that we had a few people out on paternity leave last year as well, so that increased overtime. We are working, the chief and I have talked about ways that we can help minimize that in some areas, so we are doing some of those things this fiscal year as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's just, I know there are people who look at that number and say, man, that's a big number to be over budget. Well, it's really just clean up all over the place. A lot of little things just need to be cleaned up on paper. So, unless there are any other questions, I would entertain a motion on this ordinance.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-39.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The ordinance passes. Brings us to item G4, discuss and take appropriate action concerning the progress being made by the owners of the property located at 15830 Northwest Freeway, Jersey Village, Texas, to correct the substandard structure at this location. Maisha Johnson, Community Development Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This year, January 22nd, 2024, you guys declared the structure at 15830 substandard. Since then, we've been having updates from Todd Traggett. Tonight, we believe it might be the last update, if said so by you, and so he has one last update for you guys.
Okay, great.
Good evening. So with regards to the property, we painted this past month and we installed the air conditioning unit. Our intentions are to take the fence down, remove the dumpster, remove the porta can, and get this thing on the market for potential leasers. The only holdback there is CenterPoint Energy. We're waiting on them to install permanent power. We have connected the building in such a way that the site lights burn on temporary power, and there's really nothing else. It's cool out, so we don't need to run the air conditioner right now. But we're on their docket to get. They have to drop a new pole and 3 new transformers, and we're on their docket to get that done. So that'll be happening. But essentially, we're there. We're going to clean up. We're going to do, tomorrow I've got guys coming in to do one last skid cleanup on the inside and pick up any trash that may remain on the outside, and then we'll get the fence down and everything. Any questions?
Questions from council?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So after you're done, you walk, you go away. What is I didn't mean it like that. I mean, like, we're finishing up here.
Right.
What do you have a schedule to maintain the building, keep it? I asked about the outside, but just the building in general, just to keep it looking like someone's living there?
Yes, well, it's not going to look like someone's living there. We'll have a sign out that says for lease. We'll be entertaining people that want to lease or maybe even purchase it. I don't really know. That's on up the ladder.
Well, what I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Like, if somebody spray paints it, will you?
We will take care of that for sure. We will keep it. It's in our best interest to keep the building looking nice to attract potential leasers. So, and it's it's all new outside. The inside's just bare bones, and that's our intent. And that way, the potential leaser we can finish it out to their standards and what they want or whatever it's going to be.
Council, I think if this is going to be your intent to make this one of the final reports, then to formally close out the substandard process, you probably want to have your building official or representative of the building official take the order that you initially filed that had the list of the substandard issues, have them do like a walkthrough, with working with you to work a walkthrough.
Yes, sir.
Have the building official report that that's been satisfied, those issues are not there any longer, and then maybe on your next, if that can happen before your next council meeting, you pass an ordinance or resolution, something that memorializes the fact that you find it satisfied and that's been rectified, and then we'll file that of record because that substandard order might be a problem for them leasing the property. So if you can get that satisfied, then it'll close out the process.
I'll take the initial step on that in contacting the inspector and getting him. I'll meet him on site so we can finalize everything. And then I guess I don't know what y'all do with the paperwork stuff. But
I'm sure, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, maybe on the January meeting, I don't know if that's too soon, but we'll I guess, keep an eye on it. And if it is completed by then with enough time to put it on the January agenda, we'll have it on there. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just going to say, thank you. We've seen you pretty much every meeting for the past 12 months. I appreciate you coming out and taking a vested interest and doing your part to help move this situation along.
Certainly.
So thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Obviously, you're not the guy who left this building to get substandard, but I want to commend you for your sticking with it and going through 2 major windstorms and all of that
Certainly.
to get it done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I would entertain, unless council has any further discussion, I guess there's no action to be taken on this, correct? Okay, so no action to be taken. So as long as everyone's good with that, we can move on to item G5, discuss and take appropriate action regarding the city pool. This is an item from Connie Rossi.
That's me. So I did request that this item be put on the agenda because I think it's important for all of us to discuss it. I think that last month we kind of, sort of, but I was a little nervous as to how much I could discuss, what we can get into. And so that's where I'm at with this one.
Or I don't know if you had something you wanted to specifically...
Okay, well, before I was on council, I heard a lot about the pool. And after I got on council, I heard even more about the pool. And now that the bond proposal didn't pass, and it's clear to me that our community is not comfortable with financing an amenity. At least that's how I took the vote. I'm thinking, hold on. What I'm hearing, and I've had people come and talk to me, we want a pool, we just don't want to go into debt, and we don't want to spend that much money for the pool. So I think it's, as a representative for the community, the fact that we budgeted $60,000 to demolish this pool, I'm personally, as a representative, not comfortable yet going there. Whether that's a popular opinion or not, I don't know, but I'm just not ready to let it go. the residents that have spoken to me about it aren't ready to let it go, and these are also residents who have voted yes for the bond and still came to me and said that after the bond failed.
Any other discussion from council members on this item?
I mean, the challenge that we're facing is that the pool is no longer up to standard. It's not up to code, and we're continuously having to put money into it to keep it running. We can no longer operate the baby pool or the kiddie pool because the pump systems aren't where they need to be. The restroom facility is in need of an upgrade, and unfortunately things cost way more than I think people appreciate these days. So while yes, we can replace it with a less expensive pool, we're not taking into account the needs of the future. If this community grows, we have new families that are coming in with smaller, younger children. We have families that have grandchildren that are coming into this community to be able to enjoy the pool. We need something better than what we have today. We can't just replace it with status quo as is, the way that it is. And unfortunately, that requires money to do that. The reason that we decided to go the bond route was because of that large expense, and that it's better for you to keep your tax dollars in your pocket and us pay for things as we go than it is to tax you more and not give you a vote. We can very well, as a council, continue to raise the tax rate and put monies where we have access to them to pay cash for things, but that doesn't give you a choice. That doesn't give you a vote. So that was the reasoning why we chose to go the bond route and that we chose to go into debt, so that we could improve the facilities, plan for the future, and not have the expense hit you all at once. So however that was communicated, I felt personally there was a lot of miscommunication around what the bond was about, why we were doing it, and the expense of the pool, why everybody fixated on a $10 million amount. So be it. We are where we are today. My personal opinion is the pool is way beyond its useful life, and it can no longer be maintained and supported in a safe, cleanly manner for our families to feel safe and enjoy summertime. And we need to do something about it, I agree, but we're going to have to figure that out, because clearly there's a disconnect between the information that we have and understand as a council versus the information that the community and the residents have as residents. So that's on us to try to solve. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time tonight to walk through all of the various different options that we have to be able to do that.
I mean, I want to, very well said, Sherry. I mean, very, very well said. Also, just, you know, we went round and round and round, and we as a council decided that we were not going to dump more money into the pool, but considering the fact that the pool is out of every code known to man, the refresh rate, which by the way has to do with how clean that pool is, cannot be corrected. It cannot be brought up to date. We have to be grandfathered in. And by the way, just because it's grandfathered in doesn't mean it's safe. That doesn't mean it's clean. It doesn't mean you're not going to get sick. To me, it's just even gross to think about continuing to use that pool. I'm honestly surprised that we didn't have the numbers in to have it demolished before the bond, because regardless of the bond passing or not, we had decided as a council that that pool was done. That pool is over. And I understand that change is hard. I understand it seems for some people a really difficult decision, but that pool has lived out its useful life well beyond the expectation. And, it's time to move on, even if moving on is waiting to have the money to pay for it up front, which I do think is going to cost us a lot more than people realize. This is going to be a very, very expensive choice, but it is what it is.
So I agree. Part of the either nostalgic or aquatic in me would still like to see it open. Granted, we've already made an agreement not in 2025, but also in May of 2023 at our budget planning session, we learned about the pool, and that's when we decided on the first bond amendment, and we said this pool cannot stand as it is. And that's before we had a consultant come and tell us that the lifespan of pools is roughly 30 to 40 years, and we need a pat on the back for making it last 50. I don't think we can go to 55. I took the liberty of asking some people. I put out a little Google Docs survey or Google Forms, whatever it is, and asked. I got about 12 responses from people. They all happen to be people that voted for the pool, ironically, for the bond. So they were outnumbered. But one comment was, I live in a neighborhood. I want to live in a neighborhood that is always improving, not slowly sliding into a state of irrelevance. Now, I think that marks on the amenities, but it also just everything that deals with that. Some of the comments I received, either through the survey or through other ways, dealt a lot with trust and communication. And walking around and trying to tout for the bond, I also received comments from a couple citizens about trust. And in my mind, and I'm not speaking to the people right here at this, I don't know who I'm speaking to, but somebody out there, and quite a few of them, do not trust council. They don't trust us to spend less than $10.1 million. If we said that was a high water mark, they don't probably trust us to do X, Y, or Z. And part of that, another problem people identified was communication. Now, we've talked about communication here and how we can do it better. And a lot of these things, it's hard to see the forest sometimes when you're in the trees. So this is one of those things that I asked last time for feedback about the pool and got very little. And I'm asking now for feedback on how we can, bigger picture, not just the pool, sorry for usurping your conversation, but about trust and communication. Because it's hard for us to move forward with strategic plans about the city and have citizen backing if you're not trusting us when we do that backing, and if we're not communicating well with you in order to do that. So I'd love some direction on how we can do that. Back to the pool, also asked for feedback on what people thought a pool would cost in 2024 dollars, because $20-30 will be a lot more. And the pool itself, the hole in the ground, the pipes, and the water. And they came back with $3.1 to $5 million. Pool complex, I got a range of $5 to $22 million. Now, what I have not received from people, anyone who has voted against the pool, is what they thought that a complex or a pool would cost. And in order for us to move forward, we need to, not even repairing the pool, but with a plan, we need, what's that limit? What's that limit in people's minds that they want to spend? What is it? Because as I said last meeting, we've gone through two iterations with two separate commercial pool companies, and they've given us dollar figures, and the citizens, the voters, have disagreed with both of those. But what is that, and what is our plan to raise money for that? Is it cut exemptions and raise taxes? so we can pay cash for this and save up for it over time? Is it another bond? Is it raise fees some other way? Is it to go private partnership? I think we're open to ideas. We don't have all the answers. We just want to steer the ship in the right direction. And it should not just be up to 6 people and staff. It should be up to all of us as a city and a community to decide the future. So I really part of me says that even if we move forward with repairs, which would cost, let's just estimate $500,000 on the pool, maybe. Well, I'm just throwing it out there. Estimate was, in the report was what it was. Even if it costs that, that's literally sunk cost. That's money going down the drain because we know the pool would be replaced. But before we even talk about repairing it, we need to know how we're going to replace it and what that's going to look like before we make a move. It pains me to say all that because I'm involved a lot with the program here and with swim team or just going for a dip. I don't have a pool at home.
Well, I'm happy to hear swim team is working on alternative plans that do not involve the city of Jersey Village. And so they, because they are determined to make sure that the kids still have an opportunity or an option. And I think that's good because I would not allow my children to swim in that pool at this point. It's not safe. Everybody walks by and thinks it's fine. No.
What shocked me the most, having gone through this and seeing all the negativity that was out there, was the fact that people consistently said, I don't use it, I shouldn't pay for it. I didn't use the public school system. I didn't go to public school. My child didn't go to public school. I still paid for it because it's worth the community and making sure that we have something for our future and something to improve upon this community, bring people into this community that will continue to improve upon it. If we stay status quo and we don't move forward, our property values are going to decrease, and we're going to end up with homes on 8401 Rio Grande that nobody wants to do anything about.
Well, but I'm not implying that I want things to stay status quo. I really am not. I think my angle is, I heard it all. Trust me, I heard it all just like any one of us. My issue is we don't even have a plan in place. We don't even have it sitting anywhere where we could say, okay, well, in 5 years, this is how much we'll have towards a new. We don't even have that. And for families to want to move out because we don't have a community pool, that's not moving forward for me either. And I guess that's where, and I saw a lot of misinformation. I was quite disappointed with the misinformation because every time I pulled up the city, the report and pulled everything up and read word for word what I saw, I still kept seeing misinformation. And so I'm not here to relitigate that, but here's a question, and maybe this is for Austin. Can you explain why the city did not bid the project before we went for bond authorization? Because this was a lot. This is number one question I got all the time, no matter how much I explained it. So maybe you can do better than me.
So the council put together a bond committee of residents to look at options and concepts. That bond committee recommended a concept. That concept price tag was $10.1 million and included about $1 million to get to the final design, construction drawings, and those types of things. So if we wanted to get a fully bid project, we would have to do all of the final design, all of the construction documents, all of those things that the estimate was $1 million. We'd have to spend $1 million on all those estimates, go out to bid, and time that bid in such a way that we could open bids in July, so we would have a month to prepare all of the requirements for the bond notice, so the bond council could call the bond election in August for the November election. So that would also require a company to hold their bids for 6 months, 5-6 months, which companies are not going to hold a bid that long. So it's that line of thinking is just not feasible. It's not in touch with the reality on how bid processes work.
And I think you also, I'll restate, that would cost $1 million for design, which we could still hold on to the design for however long we wanted to, but that's money that I think City Council has been, and the city has been chastised before for a design and investing in a design that was never used. So that replays that hand, if you will.
And it's not only that. I think people truly think that we could call 5 companies out, show them a picture of a pool, and be like, what's that cost? Can I get a bid? That's not even how it works at your own house. Like, not even to begin to talk about, commercial projects. Like, that's just, again, like what he's saying, that's not in touch with reality as far as bid. It's just not.
No, you'd get the concept again, the concept cost. And
the concept cost is not actual true cost. And so you don't want to bid off of a based, just, ugh.
I don't know, we could talk about this all night long, so I'm not quite sure what you wanted to get from this, but I think part of this needs to be included as a part of the comprehensive plan update. I think that's, you'll get some, continue to get input from citizens on what they're expecting, and then from there we can look at next steps.
I just think it's important. My only issue from all of this is I think any idea of holding on to the current pool as a back pocket idea should not be a viable option. I think the pool has got to go. We had discussed that repeatedly. I think we had stated as council it's not an option. I think holding on to it and paying pool maintenance costs. That was part of the budget amendments tonight, is ongoing pool maintenance costs that are not necessary.
So this is not an empty threat.
No, it's not. I struggle because I keep thinking people think because the pool is still there that we can still swim in that pool, that the pool is still viable, and that is not. I think that sends a wrong message. I think when we chose to close the pool because the pool is not going forward a resource for the city, I think we should have moved forward with demolition then. I understand originally the idea was let's see if we can get that cost somehow rolled in if the bond passes, and that was a smart fiscal choice. I don't disagree with it, but I also think it kind of sends, like, the double-edged sword of that is then the bond doesn't pass, and it sends a double-edged sword. It sends the message, oh, look, the pool is still an option. No, that pool is not an option. That pool is leaking. That pool is not safe for swimming.
What's the refresh rates 3 times slower than standard today?
It was so bad.
Was it 12? I think it was 12 hours. I think
12 hours
or 6
passed?
hours is the state, something like that. It was 12 hours. It was crazy.
Do you have another question that staff could answer that was asked to you by citizens besides the design?
Let me look at my notes.
While you're looking, I'm just going to. Everyone's kind of gotten their opportunity to sort of have their say on this. The frustrating part about this, I'm going to try to keep this fairly succinct. I know that's difficult for me sometimes. The frustrating thing is that people, I think communication is an issue, but I don't know how quite to solve that because I feel like there was lots of information being given. I mean, I know I spent inordinate amounts of time talking to people, posting on social media, answering emails. The problem is that despite providing all of the information and answering as many questions as I could, there seemed to be kind of a refusal to recognize certain facts or, and I think we see this in our society at large, the idea that someone who has a firm that has decades of experience is considered one of the top aquatics firms in terms of constructing and designing aquatics facilities, comes forward and brings you an extensive study and multiple options of various ways you could go about this, And people still want to counter that with, well, my buddy who builds pools just did this for X amount of dollars. And I mentioned this at a prior meeting, but that's not a way to determine a community's future. That's not a way to make decisions about expenditures on infrastructure. It's just maddening. And I think that I certainly feel I'm term limited in May. At this point, I'm counting the months. I'm ready, because whoever it is that takes the gavel, good luck. And I suspect there are others up here on this dais, for however long they may be on this dais after all of this, that might feel a certain amount of frustration as well. I've been doing this now for almost 8 years, and I have never seen such it's almost like the dialogue wasn't happening. No matter how much I tried to listen to people and to try to provide them as much information as possible, it just never quite seemed to take. People talked about expenses and worrying about costs and spending $10.1 million, but then they were happy to spend on an annual basis for what you got that same amount of money to refurbish a pool that's on its last legs. In other words, folks were willing to kick the can down the road for another 10 years, if they even got to 10 years, which was a big if, by spending the same amount of money only to leave folks 10 years down the road holding the bag, spending probably 30% or more of what it would have cost to do it now. That's the frustrating part, is that people talk about dollars and cents, which they should, without looking at the big picture. There are people here who drive on streets and use utilities and facilities that were paid for decades ago. They didn't pay a dime for that. It was the people who came before them who made that investment and got it done. The same people are sitting here saying, maybe I'd be willing to throw $800,000 at the problem and y'all can deal with it again in 5 to 7 years at a much larger expenditure. And I think not only is that, if you're claiming it's about the dollars and cents, no, it's not, because the math doesn't add up. But number two, I think it's irresponsible for future members of this community, because you're basically saying, you know what, you guys can pick up the bill. I don't want to chip my portion in. That's the part that's truly frustrating. As far as renovation, repair, whatever, I tend to agree. I think at least a majority of the council up here has made it clear that they don't think that there is any fiscally responsible way to continue using that pool in a safe manner. And that is why I think that there is such a push to say the facility needs to be demolished, because continuing to spend money to maintain it and keep it operating when you can't safely use it in its current condition doesn't make any sense. What we do from here, I think probably the biggest mistake is that we rushed into it each time we did it. I think there were good reasons to decide to try to do that because of the timing to try to save future pool seasons. I think that ship has sailed, and we just need to take a lot more time having a discussion with citizens and trying to find that path forward. I don't know what that path forward looks like, but at least that's, in my mind, the short-term game plan, and we can figure out where it leads us from there. So, with that, unless anyone else has anything further to add.
Did you have something, Drew?
No.
No, I just wanted to bring it up. I wanted us to talk about it. If anybody had anything to add or had any questions, they're welcome to email any of us. But this is where we're at. I told you where I'm at. They told you where they're at.
Thanks for putting it on.
Yeah, sausage and legislation, folks. You don't want to watch them being made, and it can be a mess sometimes. So, I guess that brings us.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you for.
Absolutely. No, thank you. It's good to have that discussion. That brings us to item G6, discuss and take appropriate action concerning any charter amendments to be included on a May 2025 special election ballot. Austin Blease, City Manager.
Got to pay more attention to where my name goes on the agenda items. So this is to review the background information from the City Charter Review Commission Council. Discussed this extensively last time. Lori did a fantastic job of recapping the November meeting. So tonight we simply need direction from Council on whether or not we should be preparing an ordinance to call a charter amendment election for May or not.
Just so council is clear, I think, Lori, isn't it I think February 14th is the last day would be to call the election?
I believe that's correct.
But
our council meeting in February is on the 10th.
So essentially, we'll need to have an ordinance ready at the next council meeting to call this election.
So that's why we need direction from council tonight if you want us to do that, if you were interested in calling an election or not.
Why don't we start off with the one that's sort of been causing a lot of grief lately, or at least causing a lot of comments. The proposal to amend Section 3.01 of the Charter to add a section that states, as allowed by applicable law for city-run elections, the election judge shall not direct the counting of ballots until all polls have closed. I think that at least the justification that we have heard is that there is some concern that communications regarding the results of that counting might wind up getting out of the counting room while polls are still open. I want to hear from you guys before I comment on that.
I think that was the summary. In fact, I received an email today from a person who had raised some issues with state authorities on it, and they were I guess dismissed because of for whatever reason they were. Yeah, my thought is, I respect the Charter Commission. We appointed those people. We spent a great deal of time talking about that and nominating folks, and they spent good quality amount of time on their personal time volunteering for the committee. And a lot of me says that we should respect their work and put that out for a vote. But there's part of me that says also communicating both sides of this issue might be difficult, especially from a city perspective, because as a city, it is limited in what you can say and do, and you cannot advocate. I don't even know if you can, as a city, you can say pros and cons of each, because those sound like their opinions, and Justin is earning his dollars and saying no. So, and that's fine. It's fine. So, to me, I think the chance to do that is now, and we use our best judgment. My judgment is there's a lot of costs that go into that, into not necessarily the election, but into changing the rules. And first of all, Lori has advised that would probably require a new 1 or 2 election machines that the city would have to own. I don't know if we can even lease those, what our options would be with that during an election. And 2, if we don't go that route and manually count, it would require paying a lot of people a lot of money to stay till a lot of hours of the night. And I think the odds of getting new election workers in the future might be dampened if we continue with that same process. Now, I'm not saying the process now is one way or the other, but those seem to be some of the counterbalances. In the other one being, go to the root cause, is this a solution looking for a problem? And I think those are 3 things we have to consider before we put that out for a vote.
Well, I distinctly remember an election that had a number of items on the ballot, which took till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to count. I don't know if they started early or not, but it took a long time to count, and there was a significant number of complaints about not getting the results out earlier than they did. So I think this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I don't have a feeling one way or the other, whether you start counting before the polls have closed or after the polls are closed, but I think people need to recognize that these things take time, and don't come complain if it takes longer to get the results out than it has in the past. It's cause and effect.
I'll be honest. As far as the election situation, like for the vote counting, I don't personally have an opinion on this. I don't think this is necessary. However, I do go back to the idea that we have a charter committee, and the whole point is to take their opinion, what they suggest, to discuss it and decide whether or not people get to vote on making those changes. And to me, it's a struggle. We sit here and talk about trust, and then there's an option comes up to let people have their voices heard, and we don't even give them that option. I also understand the idea is, do they quite understand this? But that I also don't feel like that's our decision to make sometimes, like for certain things. For the second thing, I think it's weird that we would even have to have a vote on removing 2 words out of a job description. But I also understand that they feel like that was important. I would be curious if something like that could be done with maybe an ordinance instead of maybe a charter amendment. I don't know how that works. But for me, it's more about the fact is if this is what they want and they want to have a say in this, is this their opportunity to be able to say that? We're having an election in May regardless. So as far as cost for this election, I don't feel like that's a valid argument. I understand when you're talking about I understand when you bring up cost. I just want to make sure everybody understands when he's bringing up cost, he's not talking about the cost to have the election for people to have a vote. It's the costs for if this got approved, what it would end up costing for further elections. I just wanted to make sure we were all clear on
future elections.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm okay putting it to vote as long as people understand the implications of it.
My concern is going to be this.
Which is probably slim to none.
Well, can I go ahead?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, speaking of implications, because this is one I'm still torn on. Because I don't know if people understand the implications of changing it. So I would like to ask Lori if she could explain the day of the election, on the day, who's all there, what's happening when the counting starts, what laws are in place to make sure that there is no impropriety. What's there?
Okay, so first of all, the election code does provide the city to have the election judge begin counting the results of the election 1 hour after the polls open on election day. This is concerning manual count ballots or paper ballots. And what will happen is once our polls open at 7 o'clock, and that's by state law, they're open from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening. That, however, can change. The legislature at any time can change how long the polls have to be open, what time they open, and what time they close. They could come up with a law that said on election day the polls will be open until 10 p.m. So that's something to keep in mind when we're talking about putting in an amendment such as what we're talking about tonight. On election day, once the polls open, 7, an hour later, they can begin counting. What happens in Jersey Village is we begin counting the mail ballots, and those are the ballots that came in by mail prior to Election Day. Those ballots are usually not that many in Jersey Village. On a presidential election, they're quite lengthy, but typically we only get 1 or 2, so that doesn't take very much time. Then once they complete that, they start with early voting. Early voting in Jersey Village is the bulk of the voting. Typically, we're talking about 800 votes are in that early voting ballot box. By state law, when you use a paper ballots must be folded when they're placed in the ballot box. And because of that, all of those 800 ballots, they're all folded. So in order to start looking at them to decipher what the vote is going to be, you have to unfold them all and get them all situated. Now you're going to have on Election Day a counting team. The counting team is made up of a caller and 3 tally people. So those are the people who are going to be in the room to be doing the sorting of the ballots, opening them, unfolding them, getting them ready to start counting. In addition to those people, the election judge has access to the counting room. The election judge oversees those workers that are counting the ballots. Also in the counting room could be any number of poll watchers that have been appointed by candidates. They are eligible to be in the counting room. Once counting starts, everybody that is in the counting room must remain in the counting room, and they have separate lunch and they have separate facilities from the regular voting. In Jersey Village, regular voting is going to be happening here in the chamber, and the counting is going to take place in the U-shaped meeting room. Those doors are closed off to the public, and no one is allowed over there. The election judge is in this department, this area, and oversees who's going over there, so that's controlled. Once the counting starts, they do the early voting. The caller calls. You have the 3 tally people. After they do 25 of those ballots, they reconcile and they make sure that all of the tally people have the same number of votes. Once they have reconciled, then they moved on to the next 25 ballots and so on. Typically, to count early voting ballots, usually they finish up right at lunchtime, maybe a little bit after, maybe 12, 1 o'clock, depending on the number that's in that ballot box. They eat their lunch. After they finish their lunch, then they start on Election Day votes. Election Day votes, as you're out here, when the polls open at 7, there will be ballot box number 1. All of the ballots from the morning time until they're ready to start counting is going to be in ballot box 1. When they get ready to start that, there has to be at least 10 votes in ballot box 1 before they can take it to the counting room.
Is this a locked? Sorry, are these locked boxes? They're all okay.
Those boxes are locked, and then they're taken. Number 1 is taken in, and number 2 is then placed while number 1 is in the room being counted. You swap back and forth between 1 and 2 is rotated back and forth, but making sure that there's always 10 votes in the box before it goes back to the back. Usually they get the first box. By that time, on Election Day, typically we have about 300 voters. When they get their first box, they're already counted. There's probably around 200 in there, and so the next box is going to be a lot less as they go, and they usually end up with the last box coming in right at 7, and that's going to be the leftover people that still haven't been counted. That's pretty much the process.
Can I ask a quick question? So there's one person you said is a caller, and then 3 people that do tallies. At any point in time, do those people switch jobs? Like, do they switch jobs amongst themselves?
We have one caller that is always the caller, and we have the 3 tally people. And then if there is that person that's calling is looking at it and deciphering, okay, it's this number, these are the people that got it. If there's a question, they stop and everybody looks at that ballot to determine and make sure they all agree that, that's what the person's intent was. And the election law is very strict, or if you want to use that word, on how you decipher that. And there's rules that these election workers have to follow when it's not clear, how, like the mark is, 3 are marked out, but 1's clean, and it explains that actually in the actual law on what those counters are supposed to do. So when that comes up, they all look at it, they all agree, and they move forward. If they can't agree, then they call the election judge in, and the election judge then administers what's supposed to happen.
So where do we, I have a little diagram. So where do the caller, the 3 tally judges, or the election judge, where do, I know where the poll watchers come from, but where do they come from?
So by ordinance, the city council appoints the election judge and the alternate election judge, and the election judge by state statute is the person who appoints the clerks. And the council tells the election judge in their order calling the election that they are entitled to so many clerks. And say, typically we have the election judge, the alternate, and then we have 6 clerks. But I believe your ordinance says they can hire as many as 8.
6 clerks, and under that's the tally counter and the caller. Are those the clerks?
So there's 4 that usually are in the chamber. That's usually the election judge, the alternate judge, and 2 clerks. 4 out here, and in the counting room are 4 clerks.
I'm going to keep asking. So if one of the if a tally, am I saying that right? Tally counter, tally person, or caller, somebody in that room that day gets sick and has to leave, do we have something in place, or is there a state law in place that handles something like that?
So this has happened in the past. We had a person get very sick. They were almost passing out, and they had to leave shortly after the vote started. And at that time, it was something that comes up, as in elections, things come up and you're like, oh, I haven't had this before, I'm not sure what to do. When that happens, you have to call the Secretary of State. And that's what we did on that particular instance. We called the Secretary of State. They explained the process of what we needed to follow. They said that, they recommended that we take the judge, the caller that was calling that day, be also a tally person. So we finished the count that day with the caller also being a tally person and 2 other tally people. And that was by the Secretary of State's advice and direction.
What are there rules governing if a person has to leave, though? I mean, they're by law, everything that happened has to be confidential. Is that right?
Yes. Every election person that volunteers has to take an oath, and that oath is to keep the election's integrity and to keep the results, if any, silent until it's time to be released. You're not allowed to let that out. They also are under the same rules of anybody else in terms of elections. They're not allowed to be making calls. People who are in the counting room, they don't leave. If this particular instance, the person was sick, they were going to pass out and they needed to leave. And when that happens, like I said, you need to make a call the Secretary of State, hey, this is going on. Please tell me what to do. I need your help. And they're there. They're on the phone, ready for these types of situations.
And just to clarify, the only person allowed in and out of the counting room that back into like the general area is the election judge?
The election judge is allowed. Also, I'm the election administrator. I'm allowed to be in and out. Also, if the Secretary of State has audit people that come around from election polling place they've never come here, but if they were to come, they would be able to come in. And the poll watchers by the candidate are allowed in the counting room to watch the process.
But they can't leave once the process has started, correct? They must wait until it has completed.
They are not allowed to leave, and they are also segregated. They are told ahead of time that they must bring their lunch, and they're not going to be able to leave to go to lunch or whatnot. They're going to be in the room until the counting's done.
Who all receives training? Is there? You said oaths. Are there any trainings at any of these?
Yes, all of our election workers are trained, and they also, while they're in the counting room, they have the Secretary of State's manual, little booklet that tells them this is how you count. All of that information is given to them. If they have any questions they're not sure about, that's what the election judge's job is, to come in and explain, okay, you do this. At any given time, if the judge don't know, she'll come ask me, or he'll come ask me, and if I don't know, we end up calling the Secretary of State. That is our go-to person to find out what we need, because they are the election experts in the state of Texas.
I think there's a couple of important points here. I get the inclination to say, you know what, the commission came up with this idea, thought it was important to bring to our attention. We should honor that. The problem is, I think that the reason we are here looking at this and making the decision whether to put it on the ballot or not is because we should exercise some amount of discretion, should look at it and say, is this a good idea or is it not? If we think it's a good idea, then I think we should put it before the voters. If we think it's a bad idea, then I don't think we should. I don't know if folks are just ambivalent about it, but anytime we're talking about politics and we're talking policy, I'm sure y'all have heard at some point the phrase, the law of unintended consequences. Policy can sometimes result in things happening that we may not have intended or may not have thought through may happen. The problem is, if we put this before the voters and they approve it, then this is going to be the binding policy on this city for 2 years. We are not allowed to touch it. And if after one election cycle we find out that there's something we didn't really quite consider, too bad. We're stuck with it. I think we have to really consider something like this before we start tinkering with our charter, because the charter is truly meant to be a fundamental document that sets forth the structure and powers of government. This really looks more like it should, if it were going to be considered, it should be considered an ordinance. That's something I would probably be more comfortable with, because if we try it once and we discover something that doesn't work right, then we can quickly change it, and we only have that one time that we have to deal with it. Otherwise, we wind up dealing with it at least for 2 elections and maybe more. That's tricky. I don't quite understand why, what makes this a charter issue as opposed to, I realize it's the Charter Commission, that's why it's a charter issue, but when we're thinking about implementing this, I think we ought to, if we think this is something that we might consider, I think it'd be better off as an ordinance.
When you talk about unintended consequences, City Attorney, could you give me an example of an unintended consequence of a changed charter off the top of your head?
So in a city I used to work for, there was maybe not unintended consequences, but when you make, this was explained to the Charter Commission, and it sounds hokey, but it's true. This is your Constitution. of your city. It's supposed to be something you don't touch. That's why there's limitations on updating it. The city that was the city of Lubbock, Texas, and so they had, their charter was decades old. And if you've ever been there, and Texas Tech University is right there. It's demolished now, but there was a red bubble arena that used to be like, I think, where the basketball and stuff was playing. The rodeos were in there. That, even though it's on Tech campus, it was a city building. It was the Lubbock Municipal Coliseum, I think is what the name of it was. And the charter, Lubbock's charter, had provisions that could not be. You couldn't. Essentially, I can't remember the charter provision off my head, but it was you can't touch it, can't sell it. And Texas Tech was expanding and wanted to address that, but the charter prevented them from doing that. And so, and whatever the reason was, it could have been great reasons, 50 years ago, but it was in the charter. And so even though there was these immediate plans for that to get done, it delayed that project for, I think it was a 4-year delay, because we had to go through the charter amendment process and then get it to the voters and then get it passed. And then all the issues you've been talking about, explanation. And once you put something out for a vote, you all are bound by electioneering laws where you can't speak in favor for or against anything. You can provide information, but you got to be very careful about that information being pro the measure or against the measure, whatever. You got to be very careful on that. And so that may not answer your question, but something like this it could lead to something like that. There's unintended consequences. We don't know, like Lori said, we have no idea what the legislature will do with anything. We don't. They're going to meet real soon. We don't know what they're going to do. And I did inform the Charter Commission of this, that from what I understand, that when this last time the Charter Commission met, there hasn't really been anything coming out of Austin that would require amendment in your charter, but there is a tone that's coming out of Austin, and as evidenced by a bill that was passed last year that it was laser focused and directed at limiting city charters in home rule cities, and that's never been done. That usually home rule status is something that's sacred in Texas, but the legislature took direct aim at charters. So there's no promise that they're not going to do that again or try to work around on what's happened already with charters.
Do you mean like limiting the home rule city's power? Or?
Yes. Yeah. And so maybe more direct to this specific issue, the context of what it was brought up in the Charter Commission, because I was there with the Charter Commission. The question was, do we want, this is from the Charter Commission to each other, the context of it was, do we want to be a city that memorializes that we are for election integrity? That was the context of the discussion. And doing something like this, because again, maybe it was the situation that Lori talked about or something like that, but if there was a question that some of the residents had communicated to some of the commissioners, that there could be a potential that maybe the rules were loose and someone could leave the polling place in that seal-off area and could announce things, or maybe there's a way that potentially there's a workaround. And in the commissioners' minds, it was related to the way that counting is early, and so there's theoretically a way that information could come out of that room. And we did discuss with the commission that state laws govern all of that, and so it's not necessarily that this is not a charter. You can put it in the charter. If the question is to me is, can we amend this? Yeah, you can make this amendment. Council does not have to accept the amendment, but yeah, you can. But should you make the amendment is the discussion that was happening. And on that night, the person with the most information was not in that room, and Lori wasn't able to make that commission. And so the only policy kind of reason for not doing it was, there was two to raise. One was it makes it expensive, and we might be there really long, if we put this in. And then again, so then the discussion then is like, all right, well, if the discussion is, are we going to be a city that memorializes election integrity? Do we want to do that? Yes, we do, and it shouldn't matter that it's going to make us count more votes. And that's the only thing. But that's where the unintended consequence. This is what we're talking about. Is that there's stuff that regardless of all the rules that are already in place, and we have other avenues to change this, which would be an ordinance. I think that's a practical solution. Is that you by ordinance every election cycle appoint the municipal judge, and you can operate under state law in that ordinance and direct that the judge, like the mayor said. In this for this election, you're authorized to, you're directed to not begin counting until after the polls close. You could put that in an ordinance, and it would not be. You don't have to do that in your charter, and you're allowed to do that action with the charter staying as is. And so, but again, the question to me is like, can or cannot you do this? You can do this, and you can put this to the voters. And yes, there might be some actions that happen. We don't know. But you're right, is that the process of that is that we cannot rework that change until 2 years, and even that wouldn't be guaranteed because the same process would have to be followed. You have to submit to the voters, and if communication is a thing we've talked about tonight, if it's spun that, look at Jersey Village is trying to roll back election integrity by taking away the thing that we put in, that's a thing that could happen too.
Now, Lori, one question. Is there, obviously the whole point of counting is so that you can keep a running total, but I know that when the counters are counting, they're typically counting on a sheet of 25 votes, but they are not keeping a running total, correct? In other words, who is it that ultimately maintains the actual total count?
I wish Carrie Lawrence was here. I do know that they have their tally sheet. The way the tally sheet looks is you just kind of do like, how you do 1, 2, 3, 4 cross mark. So in actuality, a person that had the tally sheet could go back and count. Whether they do that or not, I'm not sure. I do know at the end of the counting and when everything is done, that is when all of the totals are put together on the precinct return and the actual document that records how many for mail, how many for early voting, how many for election day.
I'm just wondering, so kind of trying to find some middle ground here. I feel like if you were going, and I think what drew the inspiration was mentioning that the whole idea that the commission came up with was memorializing within the charter our dedication to election integrity, which I think I would hope everyone agrees that's an important principle. It's a question of how to get there and ensuring that we have the ability to be able to respond to changes both in state law and in circumstances when it comes down to implementation details. Perhaps if there was a desire to put something in the charter that actually does achieve that sort of memorialization, perhaps it could be more of a statement of principles or a general that city council shall adopt ordinances providing reasonable assurance of, don't hold me to the wording, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, of ensuring the integrity of the election process, including the confidentiality of the count. And then at that point, maybe as part of the provision, it can say that council shall implement this within 6 months, if this passes, within 6 months after the passage of this provision, something along those lines, giving us the opportunity to maybe sit down and look at some solutions that could perhaps provide some additional reasonable assurance. In other words, maybe ensuring that people don't have, I don't know if there's a way to, again, this is why policy is so tricky, is you have to sit down and sort of think what's effective while also not being unduly burdensome to provide some reasonable assurance that a minimum number of people, obviously you want to have enough people, again, to also ensure no one is messing with the numbers, but you also want to keep it probably to the minimum necessary to avoid there being information disseminated, if that makes sense. In other words, can you have counters while not having everyone having the complete information at their hands, if that makes sense?
Without getting so far into this, I guess a bigger question here is at what point does council ever take any of their suggestions and allow people to vote on them?
I think we've adopted nearly all.
I look back in the record, there was a time, I think it was back in 2012, when there was a charter recommendation that council did not act on.
I think the last commission had every single one of their recommendations put on the ballot. So I don't take this lightly, that I'm saying that we need to look at a different route. Because I think it was, 7? There were 7 amendments last time?
Yeah, that was in 2021, and that was the time it took us till 3 a.m. in the morning to count.
Now, that's ironic. So
the other thing about that we need to be concerned about, and I'm not sure where you were going with limiting the number of people or whatever, but one of the solutions to a extensive ballot would be to have 2 counting teams. And so in that light, there would be more than just the caller and the 3 tally people. It would be another team. And that would be a solution to an extensive ballot, which in Jersey Village only happened once since I've been here, but it's a possibility.
Then that means more people in the room seeing the numbers, that kind of
thing? You would have to establish separate rooms. They would not all be in the same room. They would be separate rooms.
See, sorry.
I was just going to say that's an example of where you can make adjustments in policy to achieve the goal, to meet differing circumstances, that hardwiring it into the charter, it doesn't provide you that ability.
That would ultimately be a problem. That is correct.
I guess too, I think one of the reasons why this item was so torn is because no matter how we, I don't know what the best word is, but safeguard and how many laws we put in place and rules, if somebody wanted to break a rule, let's say that happens, it wouldn't matter if it was in our charter or if it was in our Constitution, right? I mean, it would just be broken, I guess. I don't know how to put it, but...
Well, within today's society, regardless if you break the rule or not, if their perception is that you did, it is reality.
Right, so everything was on the... Let's say everything is on the up and up. Everything was proven that it was done correctly. The perception that it was done wrong, it doesn't matter anyway.
Well, I mean, one of the not intended, but consequences of doing this, should hand counting continue, which I think is a discussion that I don't want to get into tonight, because that could take just as long. But yeah, agreed. So my point. Oh, the vote count. Right? I mean, I've heard scuttlebutt about California, which just finished their vote count a month later. Pennsylvania took a while. Harris County is a poster child for taking a while to get election results, and people are saying, oh, they're fiddling with the vote count. Yeah. If Jersey Village takes till 5 in the morning or 4 or 3 or whatever to get this done, to go through the 6 hours of vote counting, or 8, that it takes, how long is too long? And what will people put up with?
I did want to just say one other thing. Election workers, again, when they take that oath, and they're under oath to withhold the integrity and make sure that everything is done according to the law. Also, there are penalties. It's a Class B misdemeanor if you're caught doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. And there's also civil penalties now that they've implemented if an election worker. These are volunteers. These people volunteer their time. So, those are some pretty strict things they could face if they did something wrong. So it's important to keep that in mind.
So this is what I would suggest. I would encourage us, we definitely don't want to rush this out and just say, put it on the ballot, let them decide. I think it would be a good idea for us to maybe look at some alternative language that achieves the result that the commission intended, while also ensuring that we have enough flexibility to put some thought into this and to develop some systems that will provide that assurance while also not putting us in a bind as far as how we operate our elections. We have until, what was the latest? It was the January meeting?
February 10 would be your last meeting that you could call an election on this.
Just out of curiosity, are we just ignoring the Section 505 suggestion?
We just haven't gotten to that yet. I just felt like that was
because I understand that the big one. I get that, but I also want to make sure we don't just ignore the second one.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we got through that first part first before we moved on to the next one. But because obviously that was going to take a lot of discussion, and it was also the first on the list. So, So is everyone okay with us maybe taking a look at something a little bit more broad-based, more principle-based that belongs in the charter on this election integrity topic, and maybe looking at something at the January meeting along those lines?
I'll be honest, I think we should just let the people vote on it. As far as the verbiage, like the specific verbiage, to me it looks like they came up with the verbiage. I don't know if that was helped by Justin. Okay, I assume, but I don't want to assume.
Right. So there was, a lot more of the discussion than that, but yes, it was voted on the specific statement that they wanted added.
So they went over, they deliberated, and they discussed the verb, like how they wanted this to look. Correct?
Right. And the two provisions of the front. So the main intent was the election judge shall not direct counting of ballots till all polls have closed. The two little provisions before that, as allowed by applicable law, and then for city elections, specifically added to reflect the conversation of the commission and any potential changing laws, and that if it's even allowed by applicable law.
But that being said, it's not a take it or leave it situation. We are not only allowed, but I think that in situations where we see an opportunity to achieve what they were trying to achieve, while also ensuring that we are able to use the charter the way it's intended, not as a hardwired, discrete policy thing, but as a structure and principles type thing, I think that we should take that opportunity when we have the time to do that. There's no reason to rush this out when we have 2 more regular meetings before we have to put something on the ballot or not. I'm just simply suggesting that we take a little bit of time before we go messing with our fundamental document.
So who's going to take who's coming up with this idea then?
We could ask city staff to look at other examples from other cities. Usually your best bet is not to go crafting language on your own. Your best bet is to go look at what other cities have done, particularly what other cities have done that has been tested in the real world to see how it worked out, and maybe look at that. So I think that a little bit of research, because you can find charters for cities online easily. Heck, in Texas, you could search Muni Code and find a ton of stuff, but I think that would be a good start. Because again, I like where the commission was going with with the thought process of we want to ensure, because I don't think anyone wants counts getting out ahead of time. No one here wants that. What I want us to do is to take a little bit of time to figure out the best way to do that. I realize this is a blunt instrument that achieves it, but I think that we can look at some better ways.
So, if I might just interject here, if the council if you're wanting to achieve some method of saying, okay, the vote count is not getting out, my recommendation would be that moving forward, the council purchase election equipment and counters, and that's how you move forward. You don't need a charter amendment for that. You just say, moving forward, we are going to use election equipment, you're going to vote on an election machine, and the council needs to be prepared for the cost of that. They are quite expensive, and it's not just the upfront costs, it's the ongoing maintenance and training associated with that. That's the solution to what you're looking for. It's not a charter amendment.
Because the way that this is written in my negative mindset at this point is that while it may prevent votes getting out or news of votes getting out early, it doesn't prevent people from accusing you for taking too long to count the votes and messing it up on the back end.
I agree.
That's kind of where I was going earlier. Was no matter what we put in place, that's my concern. But then the other side of me says, what does it hurt? Just let the people vote for it and see what they have to say. So either way, that's where I'm torn. I like the ordinance idea as well. That's where I'm at on that. I think somebody from our commission has a question.
Rick, if you want, as the commission chair, yeah, absolutely. Let's hear from you. If you could go to the mic just so we have the record straight.
We discussed ordinances rather than the change. And the consensus of the commission members is that an ordinance can be changed month to month to month, and where this is more solid for a 2-year time frame. And if we felt like there was a large election, then we need to upfront say we're going to have 2 teams, 3 teams, whatever and put them here, and here, and get them all counted. But I think that was the point, that by putting this in the actual charter does support that election integrity that we were trying to get to.
I think the concern would be, what if you can't find enough people to have 2 teams? Because I think aren't the counting teams by state law have to be a set number of people?
It needs to be 3 tallies and 1 caller. And we have used, like I said, at that one instance, at the direction of the Secretary of State, that the caller was a tally person. Again, keeping in mind that only happened once in all the time that I've been here, and they ultimately, if there's a problem with having more than 1 counting team, the counters can work until 3 in the morning or however long it takes to make that count. Again, if the council really wants to solve the problem, it's not a charter amendment, it's purchase the equipment and move forward.
Okay,
maybe it's just time to have a conversation, like get the pricing and have the conversation about getting the machines, because we could talk about this till we're blue in the face, and it's going to come. I mean, people are going to continue to doubt the integrity of elections as long as there's hand counting. Period.
They're going to question the integrity with the machines. So I mean,
I know. I just think you're less at that point. You're taking away the human error aspect, and then you're also taking away the in the previous accusation that was made about people sharing information, that becomes a null issue.
And the other thing is that we should not put should statements in a formal document. They should all be shall statements. Should means, well, maybe I should and maybe I shouldn't. They all need to be very positive shall statements.
No, I agree.
For conformance is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. Yeah. Having mandatory language is very important when you're talking about legal documents.
Right.
So, again, I think, Lori, do we have an approximate? I guess, have we looked at pricing for?
Yes, we looked at pricing at the last when Harris County decided that they weren't going to be representing us every other year. We needed to look at different ways. I did get pricing on using just the disabled voting machine for the disabled voter, which would be 1 machine, and then on purchasing 2 scan counters, and then moving forward with still using paper ballot, where the vote, which essentially is what you do when you go to the polls in Harris County anyway, and then that would run the city about, I think the vote that came in like around 25 to 30,000 for that, and that was this past go round.
Okay, and you mentioned ongoing maintenance costs.
There was some training costs. The cost for training was about $2,000 per person for the maintenance on the machines and figuring out how to calibrate them and whatnot moving forward. And then and I'm not familiar with the other maintenance, but I do know that there's maintenance associated with them. There's also some negative connected to the machines that can be brought up that you need to keep in mind. People are obviously questioning election integrity these days. They can say, oh, well, those machines were tampered with, and because they are programmed by an outside vendor that does the programming for those things. So I don't think you're going to, I think Councilmember Shepherd pointed out, you're not going to get completely away from it. You either can, in my mind, you either move forward as we are using the manual count. If you don't want to do that, you purchase the machines. Putting it in the charter and tying your hands to that is not a good idea. And ultimately, if it is put in the charter, you're not going to be able to start after the close of polls and finish the counting, even on an election that's a normal 1,200 voter count. There's no way that they're going to be able to do that.
They wouldn't be able to. You mean if, let's say, there were 1,000 voters and they started the count after 6 p.m. or whatever, you're saying they wouldn't be able to finish in the evening? So they would have to go home, come back, and finish counting?
No, there would be no go home. It would be if we went to that, the people that count probably wouldn't show up to count until the polls closed, and then they would start their session, and they would count. And typically, like I said, early voting was lasting from 8 till noon, 1 o'clock, and then the rest of the day. So you're talking a good 7-8 hours of counting before you would get results. So it's just not feasible. What would end up happening is you would have to find another route. You would have to go with the scan counter, the scan machines that count the votes for you. It would work very similar to the way it works now when you go to Harris County and you vote. You go and you do your vote, and then you go to the drop box, which they call the ballot box, and you put it in, and it's going to scan it. As it drops into that box, it will count the vote as you put it in.
Because the other thing you have to think about is if, God forbid, they change the polling time till 10 p.m. and they don't start till 10 p.m. and they have to stay here till it's over, you're going to have fewer people volunteering to do those counts. And so now you're going to be in a situation where you don't have anybody to do the counting.
So that would be an unintended consequence.
So let's go ahead. Can we put a pin in that just real quick, just so we can sort of get through this, and then we can decide how we want to handle this. Do we want to go ahead and look at Section 5.05? I think the only change there was removing language that referred to the city secretary receiving assignments from the city manager. I need to find the exact language because they didn't provide a...
It was in the last part, like where the quotes were. It's like the council, the city...
Yeah, I think it
other
was
duties as assigned by the city manager.
Required by the council, city manager, this charter, and laws of the state, or something to that effect.
So the issue was there was one portion that talks about your charter addresses the city secretary's duties, that she serves at the direction of the council. This particular provision had a comment that as duties required by the council, the city manager, this charter, or something like that. And so the commission felt that was conflict, like not a conflict, just an ambiguity between the two. And so to remove the reference to the city manager, that she doesn't take direction from the city manager, that would clarify those two.
This one I do agree with, and I do think it maintains the integrity of the city secretary position. And, is ambiguity the right word? Whatever.
Go with it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
I think looking at it high level, council is responsible for both city secretary and city manager, and it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone plays nicely and gets along. And I would assume that if our city manager asks something of our city secretary, I would hope our city secretary doesn't say, you can't make me nanny, nanny, boo-boo. It's not in the charter. I would hope also that requests are made with discretion and informationally. And if they're not, then that's up to council to correct it and that thing. I have no problem with this.
I'd like to just say, in my time here, I've worked under 2 city managers. The charter is clear that I report to council and I serve at your discretion. I haven't had any trouble with either of the city managers that I've worked with. One was a little bit tougher than the other. Since we've gotten Austin, things have gone well. But I not to the point that I would ever have an issue. And If I did, I would certainly, ask and would be within my right to have it put on the agenda for discussion.
I agree, and I don't think the idea of this was for that to be like targeted towards Austin or to anybody. It's more like I'm looking at this and I see like to me this is more of the idea of that is protection for the job, like essentially in perpetuity or 2 years.
Yeah, I think it cleans it up. Like Councilmember Watson said, if everything is going great, then they're going to cooperate anyway. If things are not going great, that provision probably creates more problems than anything else. If the push came to shove. So I tend to agree that just pulling it out makes it a little cleaner. So is everyone on board with that? That we would put that up on the ballot?
5.05?
Correct. The proposed changes to 5.05.
Is this has this been a problem from the council perspective? I asked this to the Charter Review Commission. They didn't see any. So I'm wondering if we're solving a problem that doesn't exist.
I just see it as, and again, this will be the one where I say, let's go ahead and just let folks decide. Because my thought is, if it remains, is there a possibility that it could cause confusion in the future between some hypothetical city manager, some hypothetical city secretary, talking long after you and Courtney have retired? Could it? Yeah, I could see potential for it. And then the question becomes, does it otherwise have any value? Probably not, because I don't think the absence of that provision precludes cooperation between the city secretary and the city manager. So I see it as
I see it as giving clear roles. It's clear definition, and there's no confusion. I think having the language follow with what it's supposed to be is on this one's important.
If there was a possibility that we wouldn't have an election in May, I'd say it's not worth it. But if we're going to have an election in May, put it on there.
For me, it comes back to, again, like do we not take any of their suggestions? Like, this is a suggestion. I think it's valid. Put it on. Let them vote.
I'm okay with letting them vote on this. Yeah, we're still talking about 5.05. So again, I don't know where we are on this. So again, going back to 301, because it sounds like 505 we're good, right? So 301, again, my suggestion would be ask city staff to go and look at other city charters that have addressed election integrity. I don't know if it's going to be as specific as the language, something that actually gets into the question of vote counting and information getting out early. But if we can find something that provides at least some impetus to make council and put in place some kind of provision or take action to preserve the integrity of that process while still giving enough flexibility to deal with the minutia of how it's put into effect, then that's what I would kind of like to see.
Okay, then we can talk about 3.01, and do we need to go ahead and vote on 5.05?
I would assume this would get put into one ordinance, correct?
Yeah, it'll be put in one ordinance, your election ordinance, and it depends on how you want to do it. You're going to call your general election through ordinance. The last time we did a charter, we just made it calling general and special election and listed all the stuff inside.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is at least city staff's going forward with this, knowing that 5.05 will be in there, and there will be an ordinance at least including that, and then we can work on what, if anything, we put in there for 3.01. That's my suggestion.
Does that mean, I heard that, Lori. Does that mean we do no action at the moment? I'm just trying to verify. Do you need anything from us is what I'm asking.
I think direction is just fine. So no action, but just direction, and I think you've...
Yeah, is there everyone... I just want to make sure, do we need to have a vote on that, or can we operate on consensus on that?
I think council has provided the direction that staff needs to prepare.
Okay. All right. So we'll take no action on this for now.
So we're doing the city secretary amendment, but not the ballot amendment.
Yeah. Council, again, general direction was that, or consensus was that they're fine with the 505 to put included on an ordinance, but to come back with some alternate language or alternative language or whatever on that we can present to council through the proposed next ordinance. Yeah.
Okay. So if everyone's good with that, then we will move on to item G7. Discuss water meter fees and provide direction to staff for possible changes to be considered at a later date. Drew Wasson.
Yes, I've been speaking with neighbors and citizens a lot, and I know it's been about a year since we've talked water, so I figured we missed the subject and wanted to talk about it again. But one of the things that consistently comes up is the meter fee, and it's the direction on which that some people are who have an irrigation meter fee are paying $15 a month for that, in addition to the $15 a month for the regular fee. And there's about 1,400 homes that have 1 meter and 750 that have a irrigation meter and a home meter. And the ones with the irrigation meter are paying $15 a month base fee. And in discussion with staff, that base fee covers all the things that don't apply directly to the measured usage, right? So billing and meter install, et cetera, and that covers that. And but with 2 meters, it doesn't necessarily mean that $15 goes up more. Now, we all know that we need to supply a certain amount to our utility department to keep them running and from voiding that to service the utility department, which will not be serviced with general tax dollars in general. So one of the things I thought to make it more equitable, and I wanted to get council feedback before we took any action, was to, instead of 15 or 15 plus 15, just make it a standard $20 or $20.05 fee. That would result in a $5 increase for those with or $5.05 increase for those with a residential home meter, but would decrease by almost $10 those with an irrigation meter. Some other things to know about the irrigation meter that maybe not everyone knows is you can call the city and have it disabled during times when you're not utilizing the irrigation meter, and then re-enabled. And when it's disabled, you would not receive that $15 a month. So there's potentially $60, $75 of savings you could already get. That said, if all 750 people did that, that would take a lot of city effort and time and money, and probably end up increasing the amount of utility. So I wanted to get council feedback on not just utility, but then also commercial meters, and also do we want to put base sewer fees into that fee total, just to get, since that's kind of standard, and it doesn't get directed to sewer usage and or sewer costs, right? And it doesn't, that the city incurs, and doesn't get, anyway, they're not separated utility-wise. So if we wanted to talk about one rate.
So that was aggressive. I've never been a fan of the $15 a month fee. I have not liked that at all. It's frustrating when you sell people on the idea of getting your second meter and they pay a ridiculous amount to get it installed, or a lot. But for some people it's ridiculous because you're assured that you're going to see the decrease. It's worth the upfront cost to see the decrease in the long run. However, when you add that $15 a month fee on top of that, you start seeing less and less of a benefit. I've never been a fan of it at all. So, I'd be okay getting rid of it. I also understand, however, we need money to pay for things. Which, I get, but it also seems like you're being punished for going the route of getting the second meter. So it seems it's kind of strange. It's a weird. That to me, I find it frustrating. I find your idea interesting.
So really, what you're saying here, if I'm getting so just clarifying, So to bring down that $15 fee for those who have 2 meters, we would raise the price on those who only have 1.
That's one way of it would the price would go up for those who have 1, but the other way to look at it is that everybody would have a standard fee.
Why can't we just get rid of the $15 fee for second meters? Like, why is that? Why can't we just get rid of that fee and then we'll clearly have to raise water rates or sewer rates or get rid of exemptions?
We could do that. We have to find $90,000 somewhere.
Pool maintenance costs.
Utility fund operates separately.
You think CenterPoint would do that for my second gas meter? Because that would be fabulous.
Say it again. I didn't hear that part.
I said, do you think CenterPoint would do the same thing for my second gas meter? Because that would be fabulous.
So I'll say I think the key here is finding, because the total amount of money we need, that's not set by policy. We can't just magically, we don't sign an ordinance and all of a sudden our utilities just get cheaper. They cost what they cost, and we have to fund it. It's just a question of how we divvy that up amongst everyone in a fair manner. I do like, where possible, where we can incentivize people to get that second meter. People have expressed frustration with the fact that they go through the process of getting a second meter, pay to have a plumber put it in, they pay for the actual meter from the city, and then after all of that, they get an additional charge. I totally understand that frustration, because if the concept is that it's somehow related to the reading of the meter, 1 meter or 2 meters probably doesn't suddenly make it $15 more expensive. You could just waive all meter costs and just roll it all into fees. Because if you're going to say, well, just get rid of the irrigation meter charge, well, then that begs the question, so why does the first meter charge exist at all? What if we just roll it all into the fees? If it is going to be tied to reading the meter, I think that having a per-site charge makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. We're charged to read meters, but I guess what the idea is, we're not paying for the guy to drive out there with his truck like we used to. But we have to pay for the software.
That's a good question.
But I'm assuming that might not be true either.
Austin, can you clarify how that system has changed the way we read meters?
Yeah, so we do read the bulk of them remotely from the office now. There are some that we do have to go out and reread. Call it a meter fee, call it a connection fee, call it a whatever kind of fee you want to call it. But as you noted, Mayor, the number of dollars that we need to operate every year is the number of dollars that we need to operate every year. How we divvy that up is where we have that fun discussion.
I think there's another important point here as well. Why at least there probably should be a base charge, because let's say you use no water. Let's say you live out of the city or out of the country for 3 months out of the year. Is it fair to get to pay $0 each month when there's still a cost of maintaining our infrastructure even if you use no water? So I do think there needs to be some kind of base. To me, it just makes more sense of having it like a site fee, like a property fee, base fee, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to if you get a second meter, you're dinged even more. If anything, we should be incentivizing having a second meter to some degree.
It's just... my thing is, we sold this to people as getting the second meter is going to will reduce because you don't pay the sewage fees attached with your irrigation meter. And I mean, I know y'all are getting the same emails I'm getting, and I've had the same conversations with people that it's not working out that way. I mean, they're putting it in spreadsheets. You can pull up their bills and you can see they're not really benefiting it. Like it says, I think at best it comes out to a net zero. They're not benefiting. It's just there's nothing there.
I think the problem is if you use at least this summer as the example, it's probably a poor example because it was, at least for most of the summer, it was extraordinarily wet. Didn't turn out that way once September and October rolled around, but at least during the summer we didn't see the significant irrigation usage that we normally do. In a more ordinary Houston summer, I think the difference is much more pronounced, especially for people who don't have a second meter that then water their lawns using their main meter, and they're paying both water and sewer on every single gallon they're using then, whereas the irrigation meter is not.
I also struggle with the turning it off in the winter, which I think if you lived somewhere where there was actual winter, that might be a good idea. There would be. But I've run my sprinklers this November. I have run my sprinklers this December. It's the world we live in now. So my thing is that unless I wanted to make an assumption and turn it off for a month and hope it fell within that month where I'm not getting the $15 fee, I know we can tell people to do that. I also don't necessarily think that's feasible.
And yeah, some people plant new grass in this time of year or earlier,
or have pools, and that's what they're connected with.
Right. So I don't necessarily know that we're going to solve this tonight, but I wanted to put it on the agenda so we could have an open and honest discussion about possibilities. I like the idea that you brought up about getting rid of the fee altogether. But then again, I was wrong. If we got rid of the fee altogether, it's $135,000.
So and let's say it is $135,000. Does that mean are we saying there's no possible way we can find places to find where that money could come from? And I understand funds are different, and we can't, taxes have to go, certain taxes go somewhere, some places. I understand there's different buckets with different money, and I get that. But does it really mean we can't figure something out to cover, even if it's not that full amount, but is there something else we can do to make it more equitable?
You would want to find the charges somewhere else. I think we've stood on the principle of maintaining a neutral revenue utility fund. And I think that's a good idea because people then know that what they're paying for is the cost of operating the system. If costs go up, it's directly related to that. And I don't think we've put in much of a buffer. I think it's really all dead. If anything, we're probably cut into the bone in some places. So I think it would have to come from another revenue source preferably within that utility budget, like fees.
Like just raising the sewer and the water?
Raising the rates.
Well, we talked about the pool earlier and how costs have increased significantly, and we're dealing with aging infrastructure, and we're having to replace sewer pipes because, again, they're beyond their useful life and they're causing issues. And it's not that we're not doing what we need to do. It's just that the cost associated with maintaining that is more than we would like for it to be.
And water rates are going to have to go up. I think we've already had those discussions even back as far as the May meeting, the budget meeting.
And their water rates are going up. I work in MUD, in municipal utility districts, and they're going up everywhere. It's not just here. I'm seeing it across the board, just in general, just FYI.
So I personally, I like the idea of a site fee. I don't know if y'all...
The idea of the what?
The site fee, or whatever you want to call it. Basically making it a standard-based residential fee instead of having a per-meter fee.
Meaning everybody pays the same no matter what. If you happen to have a second meter, you just get the break on the sewer for something that comes out of the irrigation meter.
Correct.
Which is kind of the original premise of the irrigation meter.
Yeah.
So that's not the $20 for 1 meter, $9.95 for the
No, I think sometimes that's just how you can look at it.
Yeah, I was just using the term. I think base fee maybe makes the most sense. I don't know what you would call it.
But it's not based on number of meters per house. It's based on address.
Do you get service? Yeah.
Correct. I think something like that sounds a lot more equitable and works out better for everybody.
Is council interested in seeing the one base fee per location, including water and sewer, all into one number? Or is it one base fee for water and one base fee for sewer?
Can't we split it or something? Or split something?
Yeah, we can split it however you want to. I'm asking for direction if we want a base, because we currently have a base fee for water or meter fee for water and a base fee for sewer. We can continue that path, or do you want to combine it into one?
I'm not sure. I don't know that there's any advantage for having a separate base fee, given that they go into the same pot.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think one fee. If it's going to be the same.
It just simplifies it, I think. Yeah.
The water and sewer fees would just go up.
Well, they would just be combined into one fee, right?
No, the fees would be, or the cost of the water is the cost of the water, but your base fee would be whatever it is. And we'd assume it's higher than whatever we're paying now because it would be combined.
Right. So essentially, at the end of the day, the base fee would be $5.05 higher for somebody with 1 meter, and it'd be $9.95 cheaper for somebody with 2 meters, even combining all those together.
Yeah, I think anything you can do to simplify it, if there's not a good reason to have it broken out.
So basically, everybody pays $20 as a fee, right? Is that what that is?
Or you add in whatever the sewer is to that. What, $5? So everybody pays $25 if you get.
I'd have to look up the rates,
whatever
but it's
it is,
more than $5 for sewer for sure. But it would be a base fee of those two rates combined, the $20.05 plus the sewer.
And just to be clear, because I know sometimes this can get lost in the details, just to be clear, that's combining the sewer rate. It wouldn't be another increase. It's just combining what's already being paid into one fee instead of two. Okay. Any further thoughts on that? I think staff, there was no action to take on this, just wanted to have discussions so staff could kind of understand where we were. So unless anyone's got anything else to add on that item.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Councilmember McCray brought up a great point, though. If we can do it in a truly equitable manner where nobody necessarily gets an increase, i.e. robbing Peter to pay Paul, whatnot, what does that look like? And I think the only alternative would be you're raising water rates somehow, some way to raise that $135,000 fee or amount annually. So. It's late.
Are you suggesting What are you suggesting?
I'm looking at what I'm suggesting. I don't think is possible unless we revised all the rates that we had, the actual per usage rates, which I don't think would be something we could.
He was
solve.
saying, what if we keep everybody to is it like $15 what we all pay for the first
Yeah,
meter?
that's what I'm saying.
So like
What
if
if we
you just
keep
keep
everybody
that,
at $15?
drop the second one, what would you have to, and then if we raised rates, that would make it, that's how you would truly make it equitable. People are just paying for what they use, correct? Versus trying to divide it out among everybody. So then there's no second meter fee. Everybody continues to pay I'm saying $15 for their first meter. That's like your base charge. And then rates would have to be raised to whatever your usage is. And your usage prices would have to cover whatever the revenue loss is. And by revenue, I just mean usage, not slushy fund.
So, and that's feasible. Not feasible for January, but it's feasible for at some point down the line. However, I guess this is for council to give me direction on what you want to see. I'll provide whatever it is you want to see. I just need to know the general framework. If we want to stick with the $15 plus the $23.35 for sewer and divvy out the rates accordingly, we can do that. That's going to be until February at least.
I get the idea, but I think the problem becomes because of I don't know that it makes a big enough difference in the end. In other words, I think that's a lot of moving numbers around because at the end of the day they're still paying the money. It's just a question of how it's allocated.
But you're paying the money 100% for what you use.
Wait, hold on.
Right?
I want to make sure. Maybe I'm not understanding what you're proposing.
So the idea, everybody pays $15 for that first meter that every home in Jersey Village has, right? So everybody pays for that. Then the second meter would have no additional monthly charge. Because of that, our water rates would have to be adjusted to counteract for the loss of revenue for that $15 for every second meter. then everybody is just paying water usage. Whatever your water usage is, you're paying that with the new rate.
Right.
Right.
It's either that or
we all pay a
increase everybody's $15 rate to $20.05.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I was clear on. When you said you're paying 100% more, I'm like, for the base rate, well, not even for the base rate, because you're talking about raising for people who have 1 meter, it goes, what, from $15 to $20.05, which is not 100% more. Okay, that's what I was confused about. And then for people who have 2 meters, they go from paying 30 to 20. So they save $10. It's either you pay $5 more or you save $10. But if you change the rates at the end of the day, you're talking about you're going to wind up paying more anyway. So you're paying more whether you're talking about paying it as a base rate or paying it as a water rate. It's just a question of your usage is going to kind of figure out where. That's what's going to determine how it all falls out. My point being that, is it worth it to try to reallocate $5 per person to completely go and rechange all of the water rates and go through that process when it may be that you don't save any money at all? That's my concern. I'm just saying, we're trying to save a lot of effort and a lot of just, you could have somebody potentially getting really screwed on that. At least this way we know it's either $5, you either pay $5 more or you save $10. If you use a whole lot of water, you might pay a lot more to make up that difference. And some people may not pay, so they may pay a lot less. At least with making it limited to the base pay, it's very definitive as to what your savings or your cost increase is.
But are we also, the way I think of it is we're having this conversation because do 750 people feel like they are getting screwed?
Quite a few do.
I think.
I will say I have heard from several people the complaint was about the extra $15 charge after they had to go buy the meter, and then they have to pay God only knows what to have it installed, because it's not like I think originally the idea was it's going to be $400 to install your meter. Right. Well, that's $400 in a perfect world, not when they have to dig under your driveway and then they have to do something, and then it's $3,000 to install your meter, and it's and I get it.
I think if we're going to go down this road, I don't know that we're going to get that.
No, and it's the same concept as everything else. I had to have a new gas meter installed. I pay a base fee for that gas meter. If I have multiple phones on my cell phone bill, I have to pay a base fee for every single one of those phones. If I change my electricity bill, I pay a base fee depending on who my provider is. This is no different than I got a second meter. I was hoping that it was going to save me some money, and it didn't. But I still have that second meter that I need to pay the base fee for. So I don't see how we've constructed it to be any different than any other secondary phone line, gas line, electricity.
I think it's because it was sold, like it was legitimately, we all sat around and talked, and we sold it as, even the city sold it as like, this is the way to lower your bills, and this is the way to save money. And for I think quite a few people, that is not the case.
If you didn't have to pay for the install, then it probably would be. But given the cost to do the install, you need to calculate the return on your investment. Same thing with solar panels. How much money are you going to spend to put solar panels on your house? Is that going to achieve the savings that you expect to? It's probably not going to in the short term. It's going to take 5 to 10 years to get that money back. You got to do the math. And
yeah, I think the key here is what the city. I don't think the city said you will save money. What the city said is, if you install an irrigation meter, you will not pay the sewer fee, the sewer usage fee. Whereas if you pull from your main meter, you will. That's what was said. If people heard that as, without doing the math, as Councilmember Shepherd mentioned, if people just did it without looking at all of the numbers, then that's not great. And again, I think that if we really want to go down this route, I think it really would need to be a part of a work session. But if we really wanted to look at the situation with these people who feel like they're not being fairly, they're paying more than their fair share, we need to then sit down, look at those numbers, look at their actual utilization numbers, look at our current fee structure, and figure out what is causing it. Because it could be the amount they're using, it could be that there was an unusually wet summer and therefore they didn't see the sort of savings that they would have a year or two ago.
We sat and did this before.
I know.
And this entire work session, we pulled all of the data. I mean, we did this.
And I sat here and I said I thought that the change council was going to make was a bad idea. I think that part of the issue, yes, you can go back and look at the minutes, but the issue is that when council chose to make people, when we went away from the sewer averaging, which I said I was against, I will have Lori pull the recording and we can see who said what. But I made very clear that I felt that it was a poor decision, that the sewer averaging worked for everyone well, because whether you had 1 meter or 2 meters, you were not paying sewer fees for water that never touched that sewer. Council moved ahead despite that, with that idea. And we subsequently saw people who suddenly saw during that immediate summer when their water bill shot up, they were shocked. We can look at the numbers and see what the cause is of these high water bills. But, let's not act like this is just about the base fee. There is a much bigger issue with our rates, and I would love to go back and take a look and see how our actions as a council, when we did last set the rates, actually affected those people, and determine whether or not we want to change direction in some way or adjust it. Because that's the way, you don't do it because people are up in arms. That's not the way you set the policy. What you do is you look to see what it is we did that got them so mad. So I do think a work session would be the best way to do that if y'all want to really get our hands into this and see if we can fix the mess we made.
I'm fine with whatever council wants. My original advocacy was I knew that 1,480 people might not be happy with me, or 1,480, there's no and, would be unhappy with me if I decided to raise theirs up, but there's the chance that 750 would, I don't care if they're happy with me or not, but would save at least $10 a month, and we might incentivize more people to use an irrigation meter, which in the long term I think is the best way to go. Now, if we want to go into water rates and sewer rates, that's fine. I liked Councilmember McCrae's idea of let's just wipe it out. But at the end of the day, the simplest way to do this is to make it the same cost for everyone going forward. That would be the simplest way. And then if we want to look at however, the rate structure, again, when we're due for another study, let's do that. But if we want to have another work session, let's talk about that next session.
So is everyone at least good with giving staff the guidance on the base fee that's proposed by Councilmember Wasson?
You mean changing the fee?
Eliminating the second meter fee and having a standard meter fee or site fee or whatever you want to call it of $20.05.
I think we need a work session to look at it in more details. We can't make that decision right now.
Okay.
I
think we need to talk
fine
about
with
it.
sitting down and talking about it as well.
Good deal. So obviously sometime in the new year. But if Lori's like, y'all can do it mid-February, right? If y'all can look at look at y'all's calendar, contact council, have them look at their calendar, and we can settle on a date. I would prefer, I know people like to have work sessions that we do immediately before a council meeting. I suspect this one might need just a little bit more time because we're going to be doing a lot of calculations and scenarios. So maybe an independent, like an evening where we do just this would be best. What do y'all think? Yeah. Okay. All right. Are we good on this last item? Because it's almost 10 o'clock, and we have executive session still. Okay. All right. Then we're going to come to mayor and council comments. I'm going to start down here with Councilmember Shepherd.
I'll just say have happy holidays and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Councilmember Wasson.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Hope your 2025 starts out great. Thanks for your patience and listening to us all night long. Once again, thank you, Lori and Isabel. We get one more chance to say that at least. And welcome, Courtney. And thank you, Justin, for all that you've done for us and your patience with us. So I wish you well on your next journey.
Councilmember Rossi.
Well, I share your thoughts and salutations. Congratulations, Courtney. And we'll miss you, Justin. And, of course, Lori and Isabel. This is this, what is it, one more meeting? Yeah, one more? Okay. I attended the grand opening for the JV Convention Center. I played golf for the first time, and I wasn't half bad. So that was exciting. Also, I was happy to see that a lot of our JV residents have put up their lights, and I was able to drive around and look at all the pretty lights. And congratulations to the most bright and most merry winners. I just love the lights. I think it's pretty. And I know that this time of year there's an uptick in emergency calls. And again, I just wanted to thank you for all you do for our city and our services, providing your services and the quick response. I live on a corner here, and I hear you guys coming up and down all the time, and I appreciate that. And happy holidays.
Councilmember McCray.
I'm going to go with ditto. Justin, I'm going to miss sending emails to your work phone by accident. I've thoroughly enjoyed how much that probably annoys you. But I do want to say good luck. We will definitely miss you. Other than that, I also want to say everybody be on the lookout for Santa on the fire truck. That is very exciting. Make sure, well, it's Christmas Eve, or is it Christmas Day? See, like now I'm confusing myself. It's Christmas Eve. Just because you hear the sirens does not mean he's close by to your house. Do not go stand outside. You might be there for an hour and a half. So just keep an eye out for it. It'll be fine. So anyways, we're good.
Okay, well, I want to reiterate what other council members have said. Congratulations, Courtney. Can't wait to begin working with you. There'll be a little bit of overlap time so she can get acclimated and Lori can show her kind of what all she's doing. But we're looking forward to that. Want to thank you, Justin, for all of your work on the city's behalf. You've provided us good counsel, and I will definitely miss the humorous moments, particularly with Councilmember McCray harassing you constantly. I don't know what she's going to do with herself. Maybe I'm her next target. Who knows? She's got to pick on lawyers, so I guess I'm next. So thank you for all of your work. And just wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Apparently 2024 was the year of water policy in all of its forms. So between pools and water bills and hurricanes, I hope that the peace of this season finds you all and your families, and I look forward to seeing a very healthy, vibrant community going into 2025. So with that, we are going to go ahead and move into executive session. City Council is now going to retire to a closed session at 9:54 p.m. pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551072, deliberations about real property, Section 551071, consultations with attorney, and Section 551.074, personnel matters. Item 1, pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property, and Section 551.071, consultations with attorney. A closed meeting to deliberate the potential and possible purchase, exchange, sale, or value of real property. Item 2, pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074, conduct an executive session in order to deliberate the appointment of public officers to the city's Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 2 Board. Item 3, pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074, conduct an executive session in order to deliberate the appointment of public officers to the city's Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 3 Board. And Item 4, pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.074, conduct an executive session in order to deliberate the appointment of public officers to the Board of Adjustment. We will return to open session and continue with the remainder of tonight's agenda after the closed session deliberations are concluded. All right, the closed session was adjourned at 10:36 p.m. and no official action or vote was conducted during the closed session. That brings us to item L1, discuss and take appropriate action on items discussed in the executive session regarding the potential and possible purchase, exchange, sale, or value of real property. I love that it puts it to Connie to discuss that for whatever reason on the agenda. Anyway, I think it was probably just a copy-paste error from one of the other items.
No, there was a reason. I just wanted there to be an update to the public on where we're at. So earlier, Austin said something about the church, us closing Wednesday on the church, and the rest was an executive session, and I wasn't sure what I could say about what was south of 290.
Oh, I see.
And just to give public an update of what's going on.
Okay, do you want to do that, or?
Well, I don't know what I can say about the purchase,
have Austin
the sale.
So for the church property, we're closed on Wednesday. For the sale of the land, we do have the one parcel under contract with Lovett, and then in executive session, we discussed some offers and potential counter offers. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that item, I guess, is, or does that also include, we don't have to take any further action on that item, do we? Okay. So item L, yeah, we're on L2, consider resolution number 2024-96, appointing members to serve as directors on the Tax and Increment Reinvestment Zone Board number 2 for the city of Jersey Village, Texas. Lori, if you could read off the persons that were discussed for those positions.
Yes, so in executive session, council discussed appointing Lyle Henkel for position 3, Jane Muniz for position 4, James McDonald for position 5, and Judy Tidwell for position 7.
Okay, I would entertain a motion on the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve resolution 2024-96 with the persons named by the city secretary. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. Going to go to item L3, consider resolution number 2024-97, appointing members to serve as directors on the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board number 3 for the city of Jersey Village, Texas. Lori, if you could list off the names.
So we discussed having Meg Crady as position 5, leaving position 6 vacant, and appointing Vicente Lopez to position 7.
And I would entertain a motion on the resolution with those names.
I move we pass the resolution with the names as mentioned by the city secretary.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. And item L4, consider resolution number 2024-98, appointing members to the Board of Adjustment and appointment of a chair for the Board of Adjustment. Lori Cootie.
Yes, so the council discussed an executive session moving Nelson Finney from position A1 into position 1, moving Scott McCarthy from position A2 into position 3, reappointing Judy Tidwell to position 2, Bill Smothers to position 4, M. Reza Khalili for position 5, Jake Keel for position A1, Ricardo Cruz Umbert for position A2.
Okay, and the chair?
And the chair, M. Reza Khalili.
Okay, I would entertain a motion on resolution 2024-98 with those names.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all of those in favor? All of those against? Any abstentions? The resolution passes. All right, that's all, folks. Meeting adjourned.